The door explodes inward at 2:17 a.m. Splinters rain down like shrapnel. 4 officers storm through, guns drawn, shouting commands into the darkness. Their flashlights slice through the living room and then freeze. On the wall, illuminated in harsh LED white, hangs a navy windbreaker. 3 letters stitched across the back: FBI. The woman standing in the center of the room doesn't scream, doesn't run. She meets their eyes with ice-cold precision and says 5 words that crack their world wide open. You just made a mistake. This is her story, a 15-year operation that will bring an entire police department to its knees. Stay until the end and comment the city you're watching from. Let's see how far justice can travel. The rain had been falling for 3 hours straight, drumming against the windows of Diana Marshall's apartment, with the kind of relentless rhythm that made sleep impossible. Not that she was sleeping anyway. At 2:15 a.m., she sat at her kitchen table, a cold cup of coffee growing colder, her laptop screen casting blue light across her dark skin. The apartment was quiet, except for the rain and the occasional creak of old pipes. A modest 1-bedroom in the Riverside district, the kind of place a mid-level insurance adjuster might rent. That's what her mailbox said: Diana Marshall, Senior Claims Analyst. The truth was buried 15 years deep. She clicked through another folder of surveillance photos. Grainy images of patrol cars parked in alleys, officers passing envelopes, timestamps that told stories the department would rather die than admit. Her eyes burned. She'd been at this since 9 p.m., cross-referencing incident reports with arrest records, finding patterns in the gaps where evidence should have been. Outside, a car engine cut through the rain. Diana's fingers stopped mid-keystroke. At 2:16 a.m. on a Wednesday, in a neighborhood where most people worked morning shifts, car engines didn't just appear. She closed the laptop slowly, her heartbeat shifting from resting to operational in the space of 2 seconds. 15 years of training didn't leave room for panic. The car doors opened. Not 1, 3, maybe 4. She moved to the window, staying back from the glass, and pulled the curtain aside, just enough to see. 2 unmarked Crown Victorias sat at the curb, their engines still running windshield wipers, fighting the rain. Dark shapes moved between them, broad-shouldered, purposeful. One of them looked up at her window. Diana let the curtain fall. Her mind ran through possibilities at light speed. They shouldn't know. The operation was compartmentalized, her identity buried under layers of federal encryption. Only 3 people at the FBI knew she was embedded here, and all 3 would rather burn their badges than leak her position, which meant either someone had made a catastrophic mistake, or the local PD had gotten dangerously lucky. She had maybe 90 seconds. Diana moved through the apartment like water, each motion precise and practiced. The laptop went into the fireproof safe built into the wall behind a painting of the Brooklyn Bridge, a painting she'd chosen specifically because tourists never looked at it twice. Her FBI credentials joined it. The recording devices hidden in her lamp, her smoke detector, her wall clock, those stayed active. If this was what she thought it was, she needed every second documented. The navy windbreaker hung on its hook by the door, the one she'd worn to her niece's graduation last month. FBI stitched in gold letters across the back. She'd meant to put it in the closet. Now she left it exactly where it was. At 2:17 a.m., her world exploded. The battering ram hit the door like a thunderclap. The deadbolt held for exactly 1 second before the frame splintered, sending the door crashing inward with enough force to crack the drywall. 4 officers poured through the opening, flashlights mounted on their weapons, voices overlapping in a cacophony of shouted commands. Police, get on the ground. Hands where I can see them. Don't move. Don't fucking move. The flashlight beams swept the room in chaotic arcs, crossing and recrossing like searchlights over a prison yard. They hit the couch, the television, the kitchen counter, and then simultaneously, the wall by the door. The jacket. For a moment that stretched like taffy, nobody moved. The 4 officers stood frozen in Diana's living room. Their weapons still raised, their flashlights locked on those 3 gold letters. The lead officer, a barrel-chested man with a thick neck and sergeant's stripes, actually took a step backward, Diana stood in the center of the room, her hands visible but not raised, her posture perfectly calm. She wore gray sweatpants and a Howard University t-shirt, her hair wrapped in a silk scarf. She looked like someone who'd been working late, not someone who'd just had her door kicked in by armed men. "Badge numbers," she said. Her voice cut through the silence like a scalpel. "All of you, now." The sergeant recovered first, his face hardening. "Ma'am, we have a warrant." "Badge numbers," Diana repeated. "Before you say another word, before you take another step, before you even think about what you're going to do next, I need your badge numbers and the name of the supervising officer who authorized this entry." The youngest officer, barely 25 with acne scars, still visible under his 5 o'clock shadow, shifted his weight. "Ma'am, we need you to." "Officer." Diana's eyes dropped to his nameplate. "Chen, right now you are in violation of at least 3 federal statutes governing no-knock warrants. The fact that you're hesitating tells me you understand that. So I'm going to ask one more time, and I'm going to ask slowly. What are your badge numbers?" Sergeant Barrett, his nameplate caught the light as he moved, lowered his weapon slightly. 2847. Officers Chen, Rodriguez, and Kowalski are with me. Ma'am, we have probable cause to believe there are illegal substances in this residence. Diana's laugh was dry as bone. Probable cause? Based on what exactly? An anonymous tip, a confidential informant. Let me guess, you got a call about 90 minutes ago, maybe 2 hours. Someone said they saw suspicious activity. Maybe they mentioned seeing packages being moved. And you, Sergeant Barrett, you just happened to have a judge on call at midnight who signed a warrant based on information you couldn't verify. The sergeant's jaw tightened. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to—" "Did you check the registry?" Diana cut him off. "Before you drove over here with your battering ram and your tactical gear and your probable cause. Did you run this address through the federal database?" Something flickered in Barrett's eyes. Uncertainty. Fear. He'd checked the database. Diana could see it in his face, and it had come back clean. Because it was supposed to. Her cover was locked down tighter than a nuclear silo. But that jacket on the wall was creating doubt, and doubt was a virus in operations like this. Officer Rodriguez, a stocky woman with hard eyes and hands that never quite relaxed, stepped forward. "We're going to search the premises. You can cooperate, or you can be detained while we do so. Your choice." "Fourth Amendment," Diana said softly. Map v. Ohio, 1961. Evidence obtained in violation of constitutional rights is inadmissible in court. You want to search, show me the warrant. Show me the probable cause affidavit. And while you're at it, explain why you needed a battering ram for a woman living alone in a one-bedroom apartment. Officer Chen's weapon had lowered completely now. He was staring at the jacket, then at Diana, then back at the jacket. His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed. "Sarge, maybe we should—" "Shut up, Chen." Barrett's voice had an edge now, the kind that came from feeling control slip away. "Ma'am, are you refusing to comply with a lawful order?" "I'm not refusing anything," Diana said. "I'm asserting my constitutional rights, which as a law enforcement officer you're supposed to protect. Or did they skip that day at the academy?" The rain hammered harder against the windows. Water dripped from the shattered doorframe, pooling on the hardwood floor. The apartment felt too small, suddenly packed with armed bodies and escalating tension. Barrett made a decision. Diana saw it happen the moment he chose the path that would ultimately destroy him. "Rodriguez, check the bedroom. Kowalski, kitchen. Chen, you're with me." They moved with practiced efficiency, fanning out through the small apartment. Rodriguez disappeared into the bedroom, her flashlight beam visible through the open door. Kowalski began opening kitchen cabinets, the crash of plates and glasses filling the air as he pushed things aside without care. Diana didn't move. She stood in the center of her living room, watching, memorizing. Every action, every violation. The hidden recorder in her lamp was getting all of it, but memory was insurance. Sergeant Barrett circled her slowly, his eyes scanning for something. Anything that would justify what he already knew was unjustifiable. His hand rested on his duty belt close to his service weapon, a silent threat that wasn't quite pointed, but absolutely present. "You're awfully calm," he said, for someone who just had the police come through her door. "I'm awfully aware," Diana corrected, "of what the law says about situations like this. You want to know why I'm calm? Because I'm counting. I'm counting every second this goes on. I'm counting every item your officers touch without photographing first. I'm counting every violation of protocol. And when this is over, Sergeant, I'm going to present those numbers to people who care very much about such things." Barrett's face flushed. "You threatening me? I'm educating you." From the bedroom, Rodriguez called out, "Sarge, you need to see this." Diana's stomach tightened, but her face remained neutral. They were planting it now. The drugs. The evidence that would justify the warrant after the fact, the narrative they'd spin to explain why they'd kicked in the door of an innocent woman at 2 a.m. Barrett moved toward the bedroom, but Diana's voice stopped him. "Officer Rodriguez, before you touch anything else, I need you to know that this room is under audio-visual surveillance. Multiple recording devices cloud uploaded in real time with redundant backups. Whatever you're about to do, you're doing it for an audience." Rodriguez appeared in the doorway, her face unreadable. In her gloved hand, she held a small plastic bag. Even from across the room, Diana could see the white powder inside. "Found it under the mattress," Rodriguez said flatly. Diana's laugh was soft and utterly without humor. "Under the mattress. How wonderfully original. Tell me, Officer Rodriguez, do you practice your probable cause narratives, or do they just come naturally under the mattress, right next to in the toilet tank and inside a hollowed-out book in the playbook of lazy frame jobs?" Barrett's hand moved to his cuffs. "Diana Marshall, you're under arrest for possession of—" "Stop." Diana's voice cracked like a whip. "Before you finish that sentence, before you read me any rights, before you touch those handcuffs, I need you to understand something. My name is not just Diana Marshall, and this is not just an apartment." She let the words hang in the air, heavy with implication. Officer Chen had gone pale. His eyes kept darting between Diana and the FBI jacket, between the planted drugs, and the woman who wasn't reacting like any suspect he'd ever seen. "Sarge," he whispered, "maybe we should verify." "She's bluffing," Barrett snapped, but his voice wavered. Diana smiled. It was not a kind smile. "You think I'm bluffing? Then tell me this. Why does a mid-level insurance adjuster have a federal evidence collection protocol in her apartment? Why does she quote case law like she's argued in front of the Supreme Court? Why does she have a FBI windbreaker hanging on her wall like it's a favorite sweater?" "Could be stolen," Rodriguez offered, but even she sounded unsure now. "Then run the serial number." Diana pointed at the jacket without moving her hands from her sides. "Every FBI windbreaker has a serial number sewn into the inside collar assigned to a specific agent. Run it. I'll wait." The apartment went silent, except for the rain and the distant wail of a siren somewhere in the city. Barrett and Rodriguez exchanged a look, the kind of look that passed between partners who'd worked together long enough to communicate without words. It was a look that said, "We fucked up." But they were too far in now, too committed. The drugs were planted. The door was broken. The report was already half-written in Barrett's head. Backing down now would raise questions they couldn't afford to answer. "You're under arrest," Barrett said, moving forward with the cuffs. "You have the right to remain silent." "I invoke that right," Diana said immediately. "And I'm invoking my right to an attorney. And I'm filing a formal complaint with the Office of Professional Responsibility. And when we get to the station, Sergeant, you're going to find out exactly how badly you've miscalculated tonight." The cuffs clicked shut around her wrists. They were too tight deliberately, so the metal biting into her skin. Another violation, another charge. Diana filed it away in her mental ledger. As Barrett led her toward the shattered door, she stopped beside the jacket, looked at it for a long moment, then looked at Chen, the young officer whose face had gone from fear to something approaching horror. "Officer Chen," she said quietly, "you seem like someone who still has a conscience. So I'm going to give you some advice, whatever they tell you happened here tonight. Whatever report they ask you to sign, read it carefully. Because 15 years from now, when you're sitting in front of a federal prosecutor, that report is going to be the difference between keeping your badge and losing everything you've ever worked for." Chen's mouth opened, closed, opened again, opened. "Ma'am, Don't say anything," Diana told him. "Just remember this moment. Remember how it felt when you realized something was wrong. Remember that feeling when they ask you to lie about it." Barrett yanked her forward hard enough to make her stumble. "Let's go." They walked her out through the rain past the Crown Victorias, with their engines still running past the neighbors who'd gathered on their porches despite the late hour. Mrs. Chen from 3B. The college students from 2A. All of them watching phones out recording. Good. Let them record. Let them post it on social media. Let it spread through the neighborhood. Let it become part of the story. Diana climbed into the back of the patrol car without resistance. As they pulled away from her apartment, she looked back at the building at her window with its lights still on, at the shattered door hanging open at the life she'd built over 15 years of patient, careful work. And she smiled, because every second of what had just happened was exactly what she'd been waiting for. The warrant, the planted evidence, the violation of protocol. It was all documented, all recorded, all ready to be weaponized. They thought they were arresting a suspect. They had no idea they'd just activated a trap 15 years in the making. The patrol car turned the corner windshield wipers, fighting the rain, and Diana Marshall closed her eyes. Not from fear, not from exhaustion, from satisfaction. In her mind, she was already composing the call she'd make in exactly 97 minutes. The call to Assistant Director Rodriguez at FBI headquarters. The call that would set Operation Cleanhouse into motion. But first, she had to let them think they'd won. Had to sit in their interview room, had to watch them construct their narrative, had to give them enough rope to hang themselves. Sergeant Barrett was driving his knuckles white on the steering wheel. In the rearview mirror, his eyes found hers. "You're making this harder than it has to be," he said. Diana met his gaze steadily. "No, Sergeant. I'm making it exactly as hard as it needs to be. You just don't know that yet." The station loomed ahead, a concrete fortress with barred windows and fluorescent lights that turned the rain into static. Diana had been inside before twice for witness interviews, once for a supposed traffic violation. Each time she'd memorized the layout, the camera positions, the shift rotations. Each time she'd been building the case that would tear this place apart. They pulled into the underground garage, away from the cameras and the public eye. The familiar smell hit her as the car door opened, concrete and motor oil, and the particular staleness of a place where bad things happened in secret. Officer Rodriguez hauled Diana out of the car, not gentle. "This way." They walked her through the maze of corridors, past holding cells where other prisoners watched through bars, past interrogation rooms with their two-way mirrors, past the bullpen where off-duty officers looked up from their paperwork with casual interest. One of them, a veteran with gray hair and tired eyes, frowned when he saw Diana. Officer Johnson. She'd studied his file, 23 years on the Force Clean record, 3 commendations. He was one of the good ones, statistically speaking. One of the ones who might still remember what the badge was supposed to mean. Their eyes met for just a second as she passed. Something flickered in his expression. Recognition. Concern. Diana filed it away. They put her in interview room 3. She knew it well, the table bolted to the floor, the chairs with uneven legs that made sitting uncomfortable, the camera in the corner that was supposed to record everything, but had a convenient habit of malfunctioning during sensitive interrogations. "Sit," Barrett ordered. Diana sat. The cuffs were still on, forcing her to rest her hands awkwardly on the table. Another violation. The clock on the wall read 2:47 a.m. "I want my phone call," she said. "You'll get it." Barrett leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "After we have a little conversation. I've invoked my right to remain silent and my right to an attorney. There is no conversation to have. See, here's the thing." Barrett pushed off the wall, moving around the table slowly. "We found narcotics in your possession. Significant quantity. That's a felony. Now we can do this the easy way, or we can do it the hard way. The easy way, you tell us who your supplier is, we put in a good word with the DA, maybe you're looking at probation instead of prison time." Diana said nothing. "The hard way," Barrett continued. "We charge you with the full weight of what we found. Distribution. Intent to sell. You're looking at 15 to 20 years minimum. A woman like you with your—" He paused, letting his eyes travel over her in a way that made the threat explicit. "Particular profile. Federal prison's not a nice place." Still, Diana said nothing, but inside she was cataloging. The implicit threat. The coercion. The deliberate violation of her invoked rights. Every word was another nail. Rodriguez had been standing by the door, but now she moved closer. "We know you're not working alone. Someone's supplying you. Someone's moving product through this neighborhood. You give us names, this all goes away." Diana looked at the camera in the corner. The little red light that should have been on was dark, just as she'd expected. "I notice," she said carefully, "that the recording equipment appears to be malfunctioning." Barrett smiled. "Technical difficulties. Happens all the time. Don't worry, we'll make sure the official report is accurate." "I'm sure you will." The door opened. Officer Chen stepped in looking uncomfortable. "Sarge, Captain Wilson wants to see you." Barrett's jaw tightened. "Tell him I'm in the middle of an interrogation." He said, "Now, Sarge." For a moment Barrett looked like he might argue. Then he nodded curtly. "Rodriguez, keep an eye on our guest. Chen with me." They left. The door closed with a hollow click. Rodriguez pulled out the other chair and sat down across from Diana. For a long moment, neither woman spoke. The fluorescent lights hummed. Somewhere in the building, someone was shouting the words muffled by distance and concrete. "You're not what you seem," Rodriguez said finally. Diana met her eyes. "Neither are you." "That jacket, the FBI windbreaker. How'd you get it?" "How do you think?" Rodriguez leaned back, studying Diana with the practiced eye of someone who'd interrogated hundreds of suspects. "You don't act scared. You don't act nervous. You act like someone who knows exactly what's happening and exactly how it's going to end. That bothers me." "It should." "Why?" Diana leaned forward as much as the cuffs would allow. "Because in about—" She glanced at the clock. 43 minutes, your entire world is going to change. And Officer Rodriguez, when it does, you're going to have a choice. You can be the one who helped plant evidence in an innocent woman's apartment. Or you can be the one who recognized a setup when she saw it and made the right call. But that window closes fast. So think carefully. Rodriguez's eyes narrowed. "You're threatening me." "I'm offering you a life raft," Diana said softly. "Take it or don't. But when the ship goes down, don't say nobody warned you." The door opened again. This time it was Officer Johnson, the gray-haired veteran. He held a tablet in one hand, his face troubled. "Rodriguez, can I talk to you outside? I'm in the middle of—" "Now," Johnson said. There was something in his voice, an urgency that made Rodriguez stand immediately. They stepped into the hallway, leaving the door cracked. Diana couldn't hear the words, but she could hear the tone, Johnson's voice rising, incredulous, alarmed. Rodriguez's responses getting shorter, more defensive. Then silence. The door opened. Johnson stepped in alone. He looked at Diana for a long moment, his weathered face unreadable. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small key. I'm going to unlock those cuffs, he said quietly. And then you and I are going to have a conversation. An actual conversation, not whatever the hell that was. He moved around the table and freed her wrists. Diana rubbed the red marks where the metal had bitten in, saying nothing. Johnson sat down in Rodriguez's vacated chair. He set the tablet on the table between them, screen down. 23 years, he said. 23 years, I've worn this badge. I've made mistakes. I've bent rules. But I've never. He stopped, shook his head. I ran your name. Took me 3 tries because the first 2 searches got flagged and redirected. You know what that means? Diana waited. It means someone very high up doesn't want local PD looking too closely at you. So I used a workaround. Called in a favor from a buddy at the state level. He flipped the tablet over. On the screen was Diana's real file. The one that existed behind layers of federal encryption. Special Agent Diana Marshall, FBI Internal Affairs Division. Assigned Operation Cleanhouse. Status Deep Cover. Duration 15 years, 4 months, 17 days. Johnson's hand trembled slightly as he pushed the tablet toward her. Tell me this is a mistake. Tell me Barrett and Rodriguez didn't just kick in the door of a federal agent's apartment, plant evidence, and arrest her on fabricated charges. Diana looked at the file, then at Johnson. Really looked at him. Saw the lines around his eyes that came from too many years seeing too much. Saw the way his wedding ring caught the light worn smooth from decades of wear. Saw a man who'd spent his entire adult life trying to be one of the good guys, only to discover he'd been working alongside monsters. I can't tell you that, Officer Johnson, she said gently, because that's exactly what happened. And you know why? Because this department has been dirty for so long that violating civil rights has become routine. Because corruption flows from the top down, and everyone's so used to swimming in it, they don't even notice the smell anymore. Johnson closed his eyes. Jesus Christ. But here's what I can tell you, Diana continued. Right now, you have a choice. You can walk out of here, pretend you never saw that file, and go down with everyone else when this breaks. Or you can be part of the solution. You can be the officer who stood up when it mattered. How long? Johnson's voice was barely a whisper. How long have you been watching us? 15 years. Every shift, every arrest, every piece of evidence that disappeared, every witness that recanted, every confession that was beaten out of someone in a room just like this one. Diana gestured at the dead camera. I've documented all of it. My God! Johnson stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Outside, the rain had finally stopped, leaving the city washed clean and gleaming under the streetlights. Do you know how many lives, how many people we've... He couldn't finish. 372, Diana said. That's how many arrests I've documented that involved civil rights violations, planted evidence, or falsified reports. 372 people whose lives were destroyed because the people sworn to protect them decided the law didn't apply to them. Johnson turned back to her, and Diana saw tears on his weathered face. I didn't know. I swear to God I didn't. I know. And she did. Johnson's file was clean. He'd missed the corruption, not because he was part of it, but because he'd been deliberately kept out of the loop. The good cops always were. They made useful cover. What happens now? Diana glanced at the clock. Now you make that choice. In about 30 minutes, my people are going to walk through that door. They're going to have warrants. Federal warrants. And they're going to arrest everyone who touched my case. Barrett, Rodriguez, probably Captain Wilson, and half a dozen others. When that happens, Officer Johnson, there are going to be 2 kinds of people in this building. Those who get arrested and those who help make the arrests. Which one do you want to be? Johnson didn't hesitate. Tell me what you need. Your body camera. The footage from tonight. Unedited, complete. Can you do that? It auto-uploads to the server every 4 hours. I can pull my copy before it syncs. Do it. And Johnson. Diana stood, meeting his eyes. Thank you. For being what you promised to be when you took the oath. He nodded, unable to speak, and left the room. Diana was alone again. She sat back down, her mind already moving forward, planning the next phase. The door would open soon. Barrett would return confident and aggressive, ready to break her. He'd threaten her with decades in prison. He'd dangle plea deals. He'd use every dirty trick in a corrupt cop's playbook, and she would let him, because every threat, every coercion, every violation would be documented. Not by the broken camera in the corner, but by the recording device sewn into the seam of her sweatpants, by Johnson's body camera footage, by the devices still running in her apartment. The trap was closing. All she had to do was wait. At 3:42 a.m., the door opened. Barrett walked in, Captain Wilson behind him. The captain was a broad man with iron-gray hair and the kind of face that looked carved from granite. He'd been running this department for 12 years. He'd built the corruption, nurtured it, made it systematic. Ms. Marshall, Wilson said, his voice a gravelly rumble. Let's talk about your future. Diana smiled, because in that moment, she knew they had no idea they were already finished. Their future wasn't theirs to control anymore. It was hers. And justice, after 15 years of patience, was finally about to strike. Captain Wilson pulled out the chair across from Diana with deliberate slowness, the metal legs scraping against the concrete floor in a sound designed to set teeth on edge. He sat down with the confidence of a man who'd run this play 1,000 times before. Barrett remained standing, positioned by the door like a sentry, his arms crossed over his chest. I've been doing this job for 32 years, Wilson began, his voice measured and calm. Seen every kind of criminal walk through these doors. Drug dealers, murderers, con artists. And you know what they all have in common? He leaned forward, his gray eyes fixed on Diana's face. They all think they're smarter than they actually are. Diana returned his gaze without blinking. The fluorescent light cast harsh shadows across Wilson's weathered face, illuminating every line, every scar, every year of accumulated authority. She could see the calculation behind his eyes, the careful assessment of how much pressure to apply, where to push, when to offer the illusion of mercy. We found 4 ounces of cocaine in your apartment, Wilson continued. Street value around $6,000. That's not personal use, Ms. Marshall. That's distribution. That's a federal offense carrying a mandatory minimum of 10 years. But here's the thing. He spread his hands on the table between them, a gesture of false reasonableness. I've been around long enough to know that people make mistakes. Good people, smart people. They fall in with the wrong crowd, they make bad choices, they get in over their heads. Is this the part where you offer me a way out? Diana asked. Her voice was steady, almost bored. Wilson's smile didn't reach his eyes. This is the part where I give you a chance to help yourself. You cooperate, you give us the names of your suppliers. Maybe we can talk to the DA about reducing charges. Maybe instead of 10 years, you're looking at probation and community service. How generous. I'm trying to help you, Wilson said, and he almost sounded sincere. You seem like an educated woman. University degree Howard, according to your file. Good job, clean record up until tonight. This doesn't have to destroy your life. But if you force us to go through with the full prosecution, if you make this difficult. He let the threat hang in the air, unfinished, but clear. Diana glanced at the dead camera in the corner, then back to Wilson. Tell me something, Captain. Do you practice this routine in the mirror? The concerned authority figure, the implied threats wrapped in false compassion? Or does it just come naturally after 3 decades of corruption? The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Barrett's hand moved to his belt, hovering near his weapon. Wilson's face hardened, the mask of reasonableness cracking just enough to show the steel beneath. Careful, Wilson said softly. You're already in a deep hole. Don't make it deeper. A hole you dug, Diana replied. At approximately 2:17 a.m., 4 officers under your command executed a no-knock warrant on my residence based on fabricated probable cause. They used excessive force to breach the door, despite no indication of armed resistance. They planted evidence, specifically a plastic bag containing what they're claiming is cocaine. Though I'd be fascinated to see the chain of custody documentation. And now you're attempting to coerce me into making false statements by threatening me with prosecution for crimes I didn't commit. She paused. Have I missed anything? Wilson's jaw tightened. You're making serious accusations against decorated officers. I'm stating facts. There's a difference. Barrett pushed off from the wall, his patience clearly exhausted. You know what I think you're stalling. I think you're scared shitless right now and trying to cover it with this tough girl routine. But it's not going to work. We have you dead to rights. Diana turned her gaze to Barrett, and something in her expression made him take an involuntary step backward. Sergeant Barrett, in approximately, she checked the clock, 26 minutes, you're going to understand exactly how wrong you are. And I want you to remember this moment. Remember how confident you felt. Remember how certain you were that you had control of this situation, because that memory is going to haunt you for a very long time. Is that a threat? Wilson demanded. It's a timeline. Down the hall, Officer Johnson sat at his desk, the tablet in his hands displaying footage that made his stomach turn. He'd pulled his body camera data from the local storage before it could sync to the department server, and now he was watching the raid on Diana Marshall's apartment frame by frame. Every second made it worse. The timestamp showed 2:16:47 a.m. Officer Rodriguez standing in Diana's bedroom doorway, her back to the camera, her hand moving to her tactical vest, removing something small from a concealed pocket, bending down near the bed, standing up 30 seconds later with the plastic bag clearly visible in her gloved hand. Johnson's hands shook as he rewound the footage, watched it again. There was no ambiguity, no possible alternative explanation. Rodriguez had planted the evidence, and she'd done it with the practiced ease of someone who'd done it many times before. He looked up at the bullpen. Most of the night shift officers were at their desks filing reports, drinking burned coffee, going through the mundane routines that made up 90% of police work. His colleagues, people he'd worked alongside for years. How many of them knew? How many were complicit? Officer Chen walked past his young face, troubled. He stopped when he saw Johnson's expression. You okay, LT? Johnson realized he was gripping the tablet hard enough to hurt. Chen, that arrest tonight. The woman from Riverside. What did Barrett tell you about the warrant? Chen shifted uncomfortably. Said it was a solid tip. Reliable CI. He seemed sure there'd be product in the apartment. He paused. Why is there a problem? Johnson wanted to scream. Instead, he kept his voice level. Did you see Rodriguez find the drugs? Yeah, in the bedroom. Under the mattress, she said. Did you actually see her pull them from under the mattress? Or did you just see her come out with the bag? Chen's face went pale as he processed the implication. I was in the living room with the suspect. I didn't have line of sight to... He stopped. Oh God. LT, are you saying... I'm not saying anything. Johnson cut him off, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. But Chen, listen to me very carefully. Whatever report they ask you to sign about tonight, read every word before you put your signature on it. You understand? Johnson? Captain Wilson's voice boomed across the bullpen. He stood in the doorway of his office, his face flushed with anger. My office. Now. Johnson saved the footage to an encrypted file, sent a copy to his personal email, and stood. His heart hammered against his ribs as he crossed the bullpen. Every instinct developed over 23 years told him he was about to step into a fight that would define the rest of his career. Wilson closed the door behind them. The office was Spartan. A desk, filing cabinets, a wall of commendations and photos documenting 3 decades of service. Wilson moved behind his desk, but didn't sit. I understand you accessed federal databases tonight, Wilson said. His voice was dangerously quiet. I understand you ran unauthorized searches on an active suspect. The suspect's name flagged in the system, Johnson replied. Standard protocol is to investigate any red flags that come up during an arrest. And what did you find? Johnson met his captain's eyes. This was it. The moment of choice Diana had talked about. He could lie, play dumb, protect himself. Or he could stand for something. I found, Johnson said slowly, that we just arrested a federal agent. I found that Special Agent Diana Marshall has been embedded in this city for over 15 years, working an internal investigation. I found that we're all fucked, Captain. Wilson's face went ashen. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he moved around the desk with surprising speed for a man his age and grabbed Johnson by the collar. You listen to me very carefully, Wilson hissed. You didn't see any file. You didn't run any searches. That woman in interview 3 is a drug dealer who's going to prison, and you're going to sign the report that says so. You understand? Johnson grabbed Wilson's wrists and pushed him back. No, I don't understand. I don't understand how we got here. I don't understand how a department I've given my whole life to became this. His voice cracked. I don't understand how you sleep at night, Captain. Wilson staggered back against his desk. For a moment, he looked old. Truly old, the weight of his choices pressing down on him like physical force. You have no idea what you're talking about. No idea what it takes to run a department in a city like this. The politics, the pressure, the impossible standards we're held to, while the criminals get every advantage. So we became criminals ourselves, Johnson shot back. That's the solution. Plant evidence, violate rights, destroy innocent lives to make our numbers look good. She's not innocent, Wilson snapped. She's been lying to us for 15 years, pretending to be a citizen while spying on us, collecting... He stopped, realizing he'd said too much. Collecting evidence of our crimes, Johnson finished. That's what you were going to say, isn't it? She's been documenting every illegal thing this department has done, and now it's all going to come out. Wilson sank into his chair. It doesn't have to. We can contain this. The drugs are in evidence. Her apartment is secure. If we move fast, coordinate our stories. Coordinate our lies, you mean? Johnson, please. And now Wilson's voice held genuine desperation. Think about your pension, your family. You're 2 years from retirement with full benefits. Don't throw it all away for some federal agent who's been manipulating us from the start. The appeal to self-interest might have worked on a different man. But Johnson was thinking about the tablet on his desk. About Rodriguez planting evidence. About the 372 people Diana had mentioned, 372 lives destroyed by the very people sworn to protect them. I'd rather lose my pension than my soul, Johnson said quietly. He turned toward the door. If you walk out that door, Wilson called after him. You're done in this department. You understand that you'll never work in law enforcement again. Johnson's hand rested on the doorknob. Then I guess I'm done. He opened the door and walked out, leaving Wilson sitting alone in his office, surrounded by commendations that had just become evidence of the greatest failure of his career. Back in interview room 3, Diana watched Barrett pace. The sergeant's confidence had eroded over the past 20 minutes, replaced by something that looked uncomfortably like fear. He kept checking his phone, waiting for a message that wasn't coming. What's taking so long? He muttered. Probably the paperwork, Diana said helpfully. False arrest reports are tricky. You have to get all the lies straight before you commit them to writing. Takes time. Barrett whirled on her. You need to shut your mouth. Or what you'll add, resisting arrest to the fabricated charges. Maybe throw in assault on an officer while you're at it. Diana leaned back in her chair, the picture of calm. Go ahead, Sergeant. Dig that hole deeper. I've got all night. The door opened. Rodriguez entered, and Diana could see immediately that something had changed. The female officer's face was tight with stress, her earlier confidence gone. "Barrett, we need to talk," Rodriguez said. "Outside." "I'm in the middle of—" "Now." They stepped into the hallway. Through the small window in the door, Diana could see them arguing, Rodriguez's hands gesturing emphatically, Barrett shaking his head. She couldn't hear the words, but she could read the body language. Panic. Disagreement. The first cracks in a unified front. When they returned, Rodriguez wouldn't meet Diana's eyes. "I need to use the bathroom," Diana said. "No," Barrett snapped. "That's a violation of—" "I said no." Diana smiled. "Add it to the list." Barrett's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and went pale. Whatever message he'd just received, it wasn't good news. He showed it to Rodriguez, whose expression shifted from stressed to terrified. "We need to get the captain," Rodriguez said. "He's in his office dealing with—" "I don't care what he's dealing with. Get him, now." Barrett left. Rodriguez remained standing as far from Diana as the small room allowed, her hand resting on her service weapon like a security blanket. "How long have you been doing this?" Diana asked conversationally. Rodriguez's jaw tightened. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Planting evidence. How long? A year? 5 years? Or did you learn it from day one, taught by veterans who told you it's just how things are done?" "Shut up." "I'm genuinely curious," Diana continued. "Because in my experience, there are 2 types of corrupt cops. The ones who start dirty, they join the force specifically to abuse power, and the ones who get corrupted over time, good people who make one compromise then another until they can't remember who they used to be." "Which one are you, Officer Rodriguez?" Rodriguez's hand trembled on her weapon. "You don't know anything about me." "I know you planted cocaine in my bedroom at 2:23 a.m. I know you did it smoothly, efficiently, like you've practiced. I know that when this is over, you're going to have to explain to a federal judge why you violated my Fourth Amendment rights while simultaneously committing evidence tampering and participating in a conspiracy to deprive me of my civil liberties. So yeah, Officer Rodriguez, I know plenty." "You're bluffing. You can't prove—" "Body camera footage," Diana said simply. "Officer Johnson's body camera. He pulled it before it synced to your compromised server. Right now, he's probably looking at crystal clear video of you removing that bag from your vest and planting it under my mattress. How do you think that's going to play in court?" Rodriguez's face drained of color. She opened her mouth closed. It opened it again. "I was following orders. That defense didn't work at Nuremberg. It won't work here." The door slammed open. Wilson stormed in, Barrett and another officer Diana didn't recognize following behind him. The captain's face was red with fury. "Everyone out," Wilson barked. "Except her." Barrett and Rodriguez exchanged glances, but obeyed, filing out quickly. Wilson waited until the door closed before turning to Diana. "All right," he said. "Let's stop playing games. What do you want?" Diana raised an eyebrow. "I want my constitutional rights respected, but I think we're past that point, aren't we?" "How much?" Wilson's voice was tight. "Everyone has a price. Name yours. Money. We can move funds around. A promotion somewhere, I've got connections at the state level. You want this to go away quietly, we can make that happen. But you need to give me something to work with here." For the first time that night, Diana laughed, a genuine sound of disbelief. "You're trying to bribe a federal agent? Captain, do you understand how many additional charges you just added to your indictment?" Wilson slammed his palm on the table. "God damn it, I'm trying to help you. You think the FBI gives a shit about you? You're a tool to them. Nothing more. 15 years undercover, and for what? You think they'll protect you when this blows back. You think they won't hang you out to dry the second it's convenient." "The difference between you and them," Diana said quietly, "is that they won't have to, because I didn't break the law. You did. Your officers did. This entire department did. And in—" She checked the clock. 11 minutes, you're going to find out exactly what happens when federal law enforcement decides you're not worth protecting anymore. Wilson stared at her, and Diana watched realization dawn in his eyes. You knew. You knew we were coming tonight. I suspected, Diana corrected. You've been escalating for months. More aggressive raids, more planted evidence getting sloppy, because you thought you were untouchable. I calculated there was an 83% probability you'd make a move on me within the next 6 months. Tonight just happened to be the night. This was a setup. The whole thing was a trap, Diana finished. One you walked into with your eyes wide open. See, Captain? The beauty of catching corrupt cops is that they always think they're smarter than their victims. They always think one more illegal arrest won't matter. They always think they can control the narrative. She leaned forward. But you can't control what you don't know. And what you didn't know is that every second of tonight has been documented. Every violation, every threat, every word out of your mouth in this room. It's all evidence now. Wilson's phone rang. He looked at the screen, and what little color remained in his face vanished completely. You should answer that, Diana said. I suspect it's important. Wilson answered, his hand shaking. Wilson. He listened for 5 seconds, then 10. Then his knees buckled, and he had to grab the table for support. When? A pause. How many? Another pause. Jesus Christ. He ended the call and looked at Diana with the eyes of a man watching his entire world collapse. They're coming, he whispered. I know, Diana said. FBI, Homeland Security, State Police. They're converging on this building right now. They have warrants. Federal warrants. For me. For half my department. I know. Wilson sank into the chair across from her. How long have you known? Since 3:47 a.m. That's when Assistant Director Rodriguez, no relation to your Officer Rodriguez, authorized Operation Cleanhouse to move to the apprehension phase. I've been counting down in my head. You could have told me. You could have warned us. Diana's eyes were hard as diamonds. Like you warned the 372 people whose lives you destroyed. Like you warned the families torn apart by false arrests. Like you warned the innocent people who spent years in prison because you needed to make your numbers look good. She shook her head. No, Captain. You don't get warnings. You get justice. Finally. The building's alarm system blared to life. Not the fire alarm, but the security alert that meant unauthorized entry at multiple points. Shouts echoed through the corridors, running footsteps, the metallic crash of doors being breached. Wilson stood on shaking legs. I have to. Sit down, Captain. Diana's voice cracked like a whip. You're not going anywhere. This room right now is the safest place you could possibly be, because out there, your officers are about to make a decision: surrender peacefully or go down fighting. And if you walk out that door, if you try to run or resist, someone's going to make a mistake. Someone's going to get hurt. And I've worked too hard for too long to see this operation end in violence. Wilson sat, not because he was obeying, but because his legs wouldn't hold him anymore. The door to interview room 3 opened one final time. Special Agent Marcus Chen of the FBI's Public Corruption Unit stood in the doorway, flanked by 4 tactical officers in full gear. He looked at Diana, then at Wilson, then back to Diana. Agent Marshall, he said formally. Are you all right? Diana stood, rolling her shoulders to work out the stiffness from hours of sitting. I'm fine, Agent Chen. Thank you for the timely extraction. Captain Theodore Wilson. Chen continued, his voice taking on the ritual formality of official duty. You are under arrest for conspiracy to violate civil rights under color of law, deprivation of rights under color of law, conspiracy to tamper with evidence, and obstruction of justice. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. As Chen read Wilson his rights, the same rights Wilson had violated countless times throughout his career. Diana walked past them into the hallway. The police station had been transformed. Federal agents swarmed through every corridor, badges visible on tactical vests, weapons drawn but held low. Local officers sat on benches along the walls, hands zip-tied their faces, showing various shades of shock, fear, and resignation. Barrett sat among them, his head in his hands. Rodriguez was crying softly, her tough facade shattered completely. Others Diana recognized from her file's faces she'd memorized over 15 years of careful documentation. And standing near the entrance to the bullpen, still in his uniform, was Officer Johnson. He wasn't restrained. An FBI agent stood next to him, taking his statement, but it was clear he was there voluntarily. Diana walked over. Johnson looked up as she approached his weathered face, showing every one of his 52 years. "Agent Marshall," he said, "I'm sorry for all of it, for not seeing it sooner, for not—" "You saw it when it mattered," Diana interrupted gently. "You made the right choice. That counts for something." "Does it?" "When 372 people already suffered." "Yes," Diana said firmly. "Because choice is all we have. You can't change what happened before tonight. But you can make sure it never happens again. You can be the voice that speaks for those who couldn't speak for themselves. You can testify. You can help rebuild this department into what it's supposed to be." Johnson's eyes were wet. "They're going to fire me anyway, aren't they?" "Probably," Diana admitted. "But Officer Johnson, there are worse things than losing a job with a corrupt department. You get to walk out of here with your integrity. Most of your colleagues won't." Through the station's front windows, Diana could see more vehicles arriving. News vans, state officials, the county DA. The sun was starting to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, washing away the night's darkness. 15 years. 5,478 days of lying, watching, documenting. Of pretending to be someone she wasn't while the truth ate at her like acid. Of seeing injustice and having to wait, having to be patient, having to trust that the long game would pay off. And now finally it had. Assistant Director Rodriguez appeared at Diana's side, the real Rodriguez, a sharp-eyed woman in her late 50s who'd been Diana's handler through all of this. "Hell of a night," Rodriguez said. "Hell of a 15 years, Diana countered. "You did good, Marshall. Better than good. This is going to ripple through every department in the country. We're already getting calls from other field offices wanting to know how we pulled it off." Diana watched as more officers were led out in restraints. 23 arrests tonight. 23 people who'd sworn oaths to protect and serve, who'd instead chosen to destroy and betray. "It's not over," Diana said. "This is just the beginning. The trials, the appeals, the department reorganization, the community healing. We've torn down the corrupt structure. But now comes the hard part, building something better in its place." "One step at a time," Rodriguez said. "Today, we celebrate the win. Tomorrow, we start the next phase. But tonight, Diana, you earned this. You earned the right to watch these bastards fall." Diana nodded. She should feel triumphant, victorious. Instead, she felt tired, bone-deep exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with missing sleep. But underneath the exhaustion was something else, something harder to name. Relief, justice, the quiet satisfaction of a promise kept. Outside, the sun continued its rise, and Diana Marshall, Special Agent Diana Marshall, stood in the ruins of a corrupt empire and allowed herself for the first time in 15 years to believe that maybe, just maybe, the system could work after all. The sun climbed higher as federal agents continued processing the scene, but Diana found herself unable to leave the station. She'd spent 15 years inside these walls under false pretenses. Now she walked through them wearing her truth like armor. The FBI windbreaker felt heavier than it should, each letter stitched across her back, a declaration she'd been forced to hide for so long. Marshall. Agent Chen appeared at her elbow holding a tablet. "We need you to walk us through the evidence chain. Your apartment's been secured, but we need your authorization to access the encrypted files." Diana took the tablet, her fingers moving across the screen with practiced efficiency. 15 years of documentation. Surveillance photos, audio recordings, witness statements, financial records, tracking money that disappeared and reappeared in offshore accounts. Every piece had been uploaded to secure servers the moment she'd collected it, redundant backups scattered across 3 continents. "The primary archive is here," she said, pulling up a directory tree that made Chen's eyes widen. "Subdivided by officer, by type of violation, by date. Cross-referenced with official department records to show the discrepancies. I've got body cam footage that mysteriously disappeared from the server's interview recordings that were never logged, evidence logs that don't match the physical evidence." Chen scrolled through the files, his expression growing darker with each folder he opened. "Jesus, this is going to take months to process fully." 15 years to collect, Diana said quietly. "I hope you've got the time to review it properly." A commotion near the holding area drew their attention. One of the arrested officers, Detective Marcus Stone, a 20-year veteran with a service record that looked pristine, until you knew where to look, was shouting at the federal agents processing him. "This is bullshit. I want my lawyer. You can't just storm in here and—" "Detective Stone." Diana's voice cut through his tirade like a blade through silk. She walked toward him, and the federal agent stepped aside. Stone's face went from red with anger to pale with recognition. "You," he breathed. "You were at the Hernandez scene. 2 years ago. You were the witness who—" He stopped, realization crashing over him. "You saw everything." "I saw you plant the gun," Diana confirmed. "I saw you coach the other officers on their statements. I saw you threaten Maria Hernandez's 14-year-old son to keep him from talking. And I documented every single second of it." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper only he could hear. "How's it feel, Detective, knowing you're going to prison for destroying that family? Knowing her son spent 3 years in juvie because you needed to close a case?" Stone's legs buckled. The federal agents caught him before he hit the floor. "Get him out of here," Chen ordered. As they hauled Stone away, he looked back at Diana. "How many of them knew you were there? Watching?" "None of them knew I was FBI," Diana said. "But a few suspected I was paying too much attention. There were a couple of close calls, times when I had to fade into the background, play the scared civilian, let them think I was just another witness who'd forget what they saw." Her jaw tightened. "Those were the hardest moments. Watching them violate people's rights and having to pretend I didn't care." Officer Johnson approached, escorted by a federal agent, but clearly not under arrest. His uniform looked wrong on him now, like a costume that no longer fit. "Agent Marshall, they're saying I need to give a formal statement. About tonight. About everything." "You should," Diana said. "Your testimony is going to be crucial. You're the only officer in this building who chose truth over loyalty." Johnson's laugh was bitter. "Loyalty. I thought that's what I was showing all these years. Loyalty to the badge, to my brothers in blue. Turns out I was just being loyal to a lie." "No," Diana said firmly. "You were loyal to what the badge is supposed to mean. That's why you're standing here free while they're in restraints. That distinction matters, Officer Johnson. Don't lose sight of it." The federal agent cleared his throat. "Sir, if you're ready." Johnson nodded, but before he left, he turned back to Diana. "The Hernandez case. The one Stone mentioned. I was there that night. Not at the scene, but at the station when they brought the kid in. He kept saying he didn't do it, kept saying the gun wasn't his. I thought he was just another scared kid lying to save himself." His voice cracked. "I walked past that cell a dozen times and never once thought to question the arrest." "You didn't know," Diana said. "I should have. That's my point. I should have known, should have looked closer, should have asked the hard questions. But it was easier not to. Easier to trust that Stone had it right. Easier to believe the system worked." He met her eyes. How many others were there? How many kids like Hernandez? Diana's silence was answer enough. Johnson walked away with the agent, his shoulders bent under the weight of complicity he'd never intended but couldn't escape. Rodriguez, the assistant director, not the arrested officer, appeared with a phone in her hand. "Diana, we've got a problem. The news crews are multiplying outside, and the county DA just showed up demanding answers. We need to give them something before this turns into a media circus." "It already is a media circus," Diana observed, glancing at the windows where camera crews were setting up lights. "Fair point, but we control the narrative if we move fast. I want you to brief the DA personally. Show her enough to understand the scope without compromising the investigation. Can you do that?" Diana followed Rodriguez through the station to a conference room that had been commandeered as a temporary command center. Maps covered one wall showing the interconnected web of corruption that had spread through the department like cancer. Red pins marked officers under arrest. Yellow pins marked those under investigation. Blue pins marked the so few who'd come out clean. District Attorney Jennifer Cortez stood studying the map, her expression unreadable. She was a formidable woman in her early 40s, elected 3 years ago on a reform platform that had made her enemies in the old guard establishment. Diana had researched her extensively clean record, genuine conviction, but politically vulnerable. This case could either make her career or destroy it. Cortez turned as they entered. "Agent Marshall, I've heard a great deal about you in the past 2 hours. Apparently you've been living in my jurisdiction for 15 years while investigating my police department, and nobody thought to inform me." "Ma'am, the investigation required absolute secrecy," Rodriguez began, but Cortez held up a hand. "I'm not angry, Assistant Director. I'm impressed, and frankly vindicated. I've been pushing for independent oversight of this department since I took office, and I've been stonewalled at every turn. Now I know why." She gestured at the map. 23 arrests so far. How high does this go? Diana stepped forward. Captain Wilson was the operational head, but he wasn't the architect. The corruption is systematic, which means it required protection from above. We're still piecing together the full network, but preliminary evidence suggests involvement at the city council level, possibly the mayor's office. Cortez's eyes narrowed. "Mayor Daniels." "We're not prepared to make that accusation yet," Rodriguez interjected quickly. "But we have financial records showing regular payments from department slush funds to several city officials. Following the money is our next priority." "Show me," Cortez demanded. Diana pulled up the files on a laptop displaying a complex web of transactions. Money moving from seized asset accounts into shell companies, then dispersed to various recipients through layers of obfuscation. But the pattern was clear once you knew how to look. "Here," Diana said, highlighting a series of payments. "Every month like clockwork. 50,000 moving through 3 different accounts before landing in a consulting firm that doesn't actually do any consulting. The firm's registered owner is a shell corporation, but the real beneficiary," she clicked deeper into the records, "is Thomas Brennan." Cortez went rigid. "City Council President Thomas Brennan. The man who chairs the Police Oversight Committee." "The same," Diana confirmed. "He's been receiving payments for 7 years. In exchange, he's killed every reform measure, blocked every investigation, and ensured the department remained self-policing. He's not just complicit, ma'am. He's essential to the operation." The DA pulled out her phone. "I'm calling a grand jury, today. We're not letting this fester another minute." "Ma'am, with respect," Rodriguez said carefully, "we need to be strategic. If we move on Brennan too fast, we risk spooking others in the network. Let us build the case properly." "How long?" 2 weeks, maybe 3. Cortez's jaw set. "You have 1 week. After that, I'm moving forward with or without your blessing. The people of this city deserve to know their government has been compromised, and they deserve to know it now." A knock at the door interrupted them. Agent Chen stuck his head in. Sorry to interrupt, but we've got something. Barrett's asking to make a deal. Diana's eyebrows rose. Already? He says he's got information about a federal case, something big. He'll only talk to Agent Marshall directly. Diana exchanged glances with Rodriguez, who nodded. Go. But be careful. Barrett's a snake. Whatever he's offering, there's poison in it. The interrogation room they'd put Barrett in was different from the one Diana had occupied earlier. Newer, cleaner, with working recording equipment and comfortable chairs. The sergeant sat with his hands cuffed in front of him, his earlier bravado completely evaporated. He looked up when Diana entered, and something like hope flickered in his eyes. Agent Marshall, thank you for seeing me. Diana sat across from him, her expression neutral. You wanted to talk. I'm listening. Barrett licked his lips nervously. I need immunity. Full immunity for everything, and witness protection for me and my family. That's a steep ask for someone who assaulted a federal agent and planted evidence in her home. I've got something worth it, Barrett insisted. Something bigger than the department corruption. Something that goes federal. Diana leaned back, studying him. I'm waiting. Barrett glanced at the camera in the corner, then back to Diana. The drugs we planted in your apartment. They weren't just random product we grabbed from evidence. They came from a specific seizure, a bust we made 3 months ago at the port of Baltimore. 200 kilos of cocaine hidden in a shipping container, supposedly full of coffee beans. I remember that case, Diana said. You arrested 6 dock workers and impounded the shipment. It made the news. Right. What didn't make the news is that we only logged 100 kilos into evidence. The other 100 disappeared. Diana's pulse quickened, but she kept her face impassive. Into the department's distribution network. No. Barrett's voice dropped to a whisper. Into a federal agent's truck. DEA. He showed up at the scene with credentials and paperwork, took half the product and drove away. Captain Wilson tried to object, got a phone call 20 minutes later from someone high up in justice telling him to forget he ever saw it. The room seemed to contract. Diana felt the implications cascade through her mind like dominoes falling. You're saying DEA is running drugs. I'm saying someone in DEA is using seizures to skim product for resale. And they've got protection from way up the food chain high enough to make local cops look the other way. Barrett leaned forward urgently. That's why I need protection. If this is as big as I think it is, the people involved have resources we can't match. They'll kill me before I can testify. Diana stood abruptly. Don't say another word. Not until you have counsel present and we have proper protocols in place. She moved to the door, then stopped. And Barrett, if this is a play to reduce your sentence, if you're lying or exaggerating to save yourself, I'm not, Barrett said desperately. I've got photos, dates, license plates, the container number. I kept records because I thought someday it might be useful leverage. I just never thought I'd need to use them against the feds. Diana left him there and found Rodriguez in the hallway, her handler's face grave. You heard? Diana asked. Every word. We need to loop in internal affairs immediately. If there's a compromised DEA agent running product out of Baltimore... It's bigger than one agent, Diana interrupted. Barrett said someone from Justice called Wilson directly. That means either corruption in the department or someone high enough to impersonate a justice official, Rodriguez finished. Either way, we've got a problem. They walked quickly through the station, past the arrested officers and busy federal agents, to a secure communications room. Rodriguez made a call on an encrypted line, speaking in clipped urgent tones to someone at FBI headquarters. Diana paced her mind, racing through possibilities. If Barrett was telling the truth, and his fear seemed genuine enough, then Operation Cleanhouse had just stumbled onto something far larger than police corruption. A federal agent running drugs protected by someone in the Justice Department using local seizures as their supply source. The implications were staggering. Rodriguez ended the call. Headquarters is sending a team from the inspection division. They'll be here in 4 hours. Until then, we lock Barrett down. No visitors, no calls. And Diana—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "This changes things. If we've got corruption reaching into federal law enforcement, we need to be very careful who we trust." "Are you saying we might have a problem inside the Bureau?" "I'm saying we don't know the scope yet, so until we do, we assume nothing and verify everything." A sudden crash from the hallway made them both turn. Voices raised in alarm, the sound of running feet. Diana and Rodriguez rushed out to find Chaos Officer Chen, and 2 other young cops had broken free from the holding area, knocking down 2 federal agents in the process. They were sprinting toward the rear exit, handcuffs still on, but mobile. "Stop them!" someone shouted. Diana moved on instinct, cutting through a side corridor she'd memorized years ago. She burst through a door just as Chen rounded the corner, and they collided hard. Both went down, but Diana recovered first, training taking over. She had Chen pinned in seconds, his face pressed against the tile floor. "Don't," she hissed in his ear. "Don't make this worse than it already is." Chen was crying great heaving sobs that shook his whole body. "I can't go to prison. I've got a kid on the way. My wife, she doesn't know about any of this. I just followed orders. I just did what I was told." Federal agents arrived, hauling Chen to his feet. Diana stood slowly, her ribs aching from the impact. "Following orders isn't a defense," she said, not unkindly. "Not when the orders are illegal. You knew planting those drugs was wrong, Officer Chen. You knew it when you did it. And now you have to face the consequences of that choice." They dragged him away, still sobbing. The other 2 escapees had been caught at the exit, tackled by agents before they could reach the parking lot. Rodriguez appeared at Diana's side. "You okay?" "Fine, just bruised." Diana watched Chen disappear down the hallway. "He's what, 24, 25? His whole life ahead of him, and he's going to spend the next decade in prison because he was too scared to say no." "That's not on you," Rodriguez said firmly. "Isn't it I watched this department corrupt good people for 15 years? I documented it, filed it away, built my case, and the whole time young cops like Chen were being turned into criminals. If I'd acted sooner, you'd have compromised the investigation and let the real architects escape. You know that. The Chens of the world are tragic, but they made choices. You didn't force their hand." Diana knew Rodriguez was right, but it didn't ease the weight in her chest. She'd become very good at compartmentalizing over the years, at separating the mission from the human cost. But now, watching the consequences play out in real time, the compartments were breaking down. Outside, the sun had fully risen, revealing a crowd that had grown to several hundred people. Diana moved to a window, looking down at the faces pressed against the police barriers. Some held signs: "Justice for Hernandez," "End police corruption," "Accountability now." Others just stood watching their expressions, a mix of hope and anger and bitter vindication. "They've been waiting for this," Diana murmured. "How many of them have been violated by this department? How many have stories like Maria Hernandez?" "More than we'll ever know," Rodriguez said. "That's why this case matters so much. It's not just about punishing the guilty. It's about showing the victims that their experience was real, that they weren't crazy or paranoid, that there really was a systematic problem." District Attorney Cortez appeared at the window beside them. "We need to make a statement. The longer we stay silent, the more the narrative gets away from us. I want to do a joint press conference, FBI DA's office, United Front." "What are you going to tell them?" Diana asked. "The truth. That 23 officers have been arrested on federal corruption charges. That the investigation is ongoing. That more arrests are likely. And that this city is going to see real change, real accountability starting today." "They won't believe you," Diana said bluntly. "They've heard promises before. Every scandal, every exposed violation, there's always someone promising reform. Then 6 months later, it's business as usual." Cortez's eyes hardened. "Then we make them believe. We show them evidence. We explain the scope. We let them see that this time is different because we're not just arresting a few bad apples, we're dismantling the entire rotten orchard." Rodriguez nodded slowly. "All right, but we control the information carefully. No details that could compromise ongoing investigations. No names beyond those already arrested. And absolutely nothing about Barrett's claims regarding DEA until we've verified them independently." They spent the next hour coordinating their messages, anticipating questions. Diana found herself in the strange position of being both investigator and evidence, her story. Her 15-year cover was itself proof of how deep the corruption ran. If the department had been clean, an FBI agent living in their jurisdiction would have been impossible to miss. At 10:47 a.m., they walked out the front doors of the police station into a wall of noise. Camera flashes shouted questions, the crowd pressing against barriers. Cortez stepped to the podium they'd set up, Rodriguez and Diana flanking her. "Good morning," Cortez began, her voice amplified through speakers. "I'm here to inform you of the largest police corruption bust in this city's history. Early this morning, federal agents arrested 23 officers from this department on charges including civil rights violations, evidence tampering, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. These arrests are the result of a 15-year undercover investigation conducted by the FBI." The crowd erupted. Questions flew like projectiles, overlapping and incomprehensible. Cortez raised her hands for silence. The investigation revealed systematic corruption at multiple levels of the department. Officers routinely planted evidence, falsified reports, and violated constitutional rights. This wasn't the work of isolated individuals. It was coordinated, protected, and encouraged by leadership. She gestured to Diana. "The lead investigator on this case is Special Agent Diana Marshall, who has lived in this community for 15 years while documenting these crimes. Agent Marshall was herself the victim of an illegal raid this morning, which precipitated the arrests you're seeing today." Diana stepped forward, feeling hundreds of eyes lock onto her. She'd spent 15 years invisible, deliberately unremarkable. Now she stood in the spotlight, and it felt like standing naked. "My name is Diana Marshall," she said, her voice steady, despite the churning in her stomach. "For the past 15 years, I've been honored to live among you as a neighbor and community member. I've watched your children grow up. I've attended your block parties. I've shopped at your stores and walked your streets. And while I was doing that, I was also watching the people sworn to protect you systematically betray that trust." She paused, letting the weight of those words settle. "This morning, officers broke into my home illegally. They planted drugs in my bedroom. They arrested me on false charges. They violated my constitutional rights in ways both blatant and subtle. They did all of this because they've done it hundreds of times before, to hundreds of people, and they thought they could get away with it one more time." A woman's voice rose from the crowd. "Did you see what they did to my son? Did you document that?" Diana's eyes found the speaker, a black woman in her 50s, her face etched with years of pain and anger. Maria Hernandez. Diana recognized her from surveillance photos, from witness statements, from the case file that had kept her awake countless nights. "Ms. Hernandez," Diana said, her voice breaking slightly. "Yes, I documented what happened to Marcus. I have video evidence of Detective Stone planting the weapon. I have audio of him coaching officers to lie in their reports. I have proof that your son was innocent, and I am so deeply sorry that it took this long to bring that proof to light." Maria Hernandez collapsed into the arms of the people around her, her sobs audible even over the crowd noise. Diana blinked back tears she couldn't afford to break down. Not here. Not now. But inside, something fundamental was shifting. For 15 years, she'd been objective, clinical, detached. She'd had to be. Getting emotionally involved would have compromised the investigation. But now the investigation was over. The arrests were made, and all those stored emotions were flooding through the broken dam of her professional distance. "How many?" someone else shouted. "How many people did they do this to?" "We've documented 372 cases involving serious violations," Rodriguez answered. Those are the ones we can prove. The actual number is likely much higher." The crowd's mood shifted from shock to rage. Someone threw something Diana didn't see what, and it clattered against the station wall. The police barriers shook as people pressed forward. "We understand your anger," Cortez said, raising her voice. "We share it. But I'm asking you to let the system work. Let us prosecute these officers. Let us bring them to justice through the courts, through the legal process they corrupted, but which still has the power to hold them accountable." "Why should we trust you?" a young man yelled. "You're part of the same system. How do we know you're not covering for them?" "Because," Cortez said, and her voice rang with conviction, "I'm going to prosecute this case personally. I'm going to stand in court and present evidence of their crimes. I'm going to look those officers in the eye and demand justice for every person they victimized. And I'm going to do it in public on the record where every citizen can watch and verify that we're doing this right." Diana leaned toward the microphone. "I spent 15 years of my life on this case. 15 years away from my real identity, my family, my home. I did that because I believe justice is possible. I did that because I believe the system can work when good people refuse to let corruption win. You don't have to trust the system blindly. I'm asking you to watch it work. Hold us accountable, just like we're holding these officers accountable." The questions continued for another 20 minutes, each answer peeling back another layer of the corruption. By the time they finished, Diana felt hollowed out, emotionally exhausted, in a way that had nothing to do with physical tiredness. As they walked back into the station, Rodriguez pulled Diana aside. "That was good. Genuine. They believed you." "I meant every word," Diana said. "I know. That's why it worked." Rodriguez's phone buzzed. She checked it, and her expression darkened. "The inspection division team is here early. They want to interview Barrett immediately." They made their way to the secure wing where they'd moved Barrett. 2 agents from the FBI's inspection division stood outside the door, both senior investigators with decades of experience in rooting out corruption within the Bureau. Diana recognized one of them, Special Agent Linda Zhao, a legend in the internal affairs community. "Agent Marshall," Zhao greeted her. "I've been following your work for years. 15 years deep cover, that's extraordinary dedication." "Thank you, ma'am. Though right now I'm more interested in what Sergeant Barrett has to say." "As are we." Zhao's expression grew serious. "Before we go in, I need you to understand something. If Barrett's allegations are true, if we have compromised DEA agents working with Justice Department protection, this becomes a matter of national security. The implications reach far beyond local corruption." "I understand," Diana said. "I'm not sure you do." Zhao stepped closer, lowering her voice. "We're talking about the possibility of cartel infiltration at the federal level. Drug trafficking organizations have been trying to compromise U.S. law enforcement for decades. If they've succeeded, if they have agents on the payroll running protection for major shipments, then we're looking at something that could destabilize entire regions." The weight of that settled over Diana like a physical thing. She'd spent 15 years focused on local corruption on the immediate victims in her community. The idea that she might have stumbled onto a thread leading to something exponentially larger was both exhilarating and terrifying. They entered the interrogation room together. Barrett looked up with desperate eyes, his public defender sitting beside him, a sharp-eyed woman who'd clearly explained exactly how deep the water was. "Sergeant Barrett," Zhao began formally, "I'm Special Agent Zhao from FBI Inspection Division. You've made serious allegations regarding DEA personnel. I need you to walk me through everything you know, leaving out nothing, no matter how insignificant it seems." Barrett nodded, swallowing hard. "It started 3 months ago, like I said. The port seizure. We got a tip about the container, moved on it fast. Found the cocaine hidden in vacuum-sealed bags inside 50-pound coffee sacks. Standard smuggling setup. We arrested the dock workers who signed for the container, impounded the shipment, started processing the scene." "Who was the lead on the case?" Zhao asked. "Captain Wilson." It was big enough that he wanted personal oversight. We were loading the product into our evidence van when this guy shows up, white male, maybe 45, 50 government credentials that said DEA. He's got paperwork, transfer authorizations, everything looking official. Says his agency has been tracking this shipment as part of a larger investigation, needs to take half the product for their case. Did you verify his identity? Diana asked. Barrett's face flushed. Wilson said it checked out. He made some calls, got confirmation. Or that's what he told us. The DEA agent, his ID said his name was Thomas Reeves. He supervised while we loaded 100 kilos into his truck. A F-150 dark blue government plates. Zhao was taking notes rapidly. Did Agent Reeves say anything else? Any indication of what investigation the drugs were going to? No. He was professional, efficient. Didn't chit-chat. Loaded the product and drove off. Barrett leaned forward. But here's the thing, 2 weeks later, I saw a story about a huge cocaine bust in Philadelphia. DEA seized 300 kilos in a warehouse raid. I recognized one of the agents in the photo from the press conference. Let me guess, Diana said quietly. Thomas Reeves. Yeah, except in the Philadelphia article they called him by a different name. Special Agent David Torres. Same face, different identity. Barrett pulled a folded newspaper clipping from his pocket. It had been in his wallet when they arrested him. I saved it because it bothered me. Why would the same agent use different names? Zhao took the clipping, studying the grainy photo. Because he's not an agent at all. He's someone impersonating federal officers to take drug seizures. She looked at Diana. If he took 100 kilos from Baltimore, and 3 months later 100 kilos disappeared from a Philadelphia bust before it could be logged. He's hitting multiple jurisdictions, Diana finished. Using fake credentials to skim product from local seizures, probably for resale. The question is, how does he know which busts to target? How does he show up at exactly the right time, with exactly the right paperwork? He's got someone inside, Barrett said. Has to. Someone with access to Drug Task Force communications, someone who can tip him off when a big seizure is about to happen. The room went silent as the implications sank in. Somewhere in the federal law enforcement apparatus, someone was feeding information to a criminal organization. Someone was helping them steal drugs from right under the government's nose. And they'd been doing it successfully enough that no one had connected the dots until now. Zhao stood abruptly. I need to make some calls. Barrett, you're going into protective custody immediately. Marshal Rodriguez, this stays between us until we understand the full scope. If word gets out that we're investigating this, our inside man will disappear. As Zhao left to coordinate with her team, Diana found herself alone with Barrett and his attorney. The sergeant looked smaller, somehow diminished by the magnitude of what he'd revealed. Why did you keep this quiet for 3 months? Diana asked. Why didn't you report it immediately? Barrett's laugh was hollow. Because I was Dirty Agent Marshall. Because I'd planted evidence and falsified reports and done a dozen other things that would send me to prison. I kept this information as insurance, as leverage in case I ever needed it. I never thought I'd need it to save my life. You might have already saved hundreds of lives, Diana said quietly. If this fake agent is working for a cartel, if we can trace him back to his organization, you've given us the first real lead anyone's had. Will it matter? Barrett asked. When I go to prison, when I'm sitting in a cell for the next 20 years, will it matter that I helped catch him? Diana met his eyes. Yes, it won't undo what you did. It won't give back the years you stole from innocent people. But it matters. Every small choice toward justice matters, even when it comes from someone who chose injustice for so long. She left him there and found Rodriguez coordinating with Zhao's team. The station had transformed again. What had been a corruption bust was now becoming a counterintelligence operation. Federal agents were pulling files, cross-referencing dates, building timelines of major drug seizures across the eastern seaboard. We've got potential matches in 6 cities, an analyst reported. Baltimore, Philadelphia, Richmond, Newark, Boston, and D.C. All within the past year. all showing discrepancies between estimated seizure amounts and what was actually logged into evidence. "How much are we talking?" Rodriguez asked. "Conservative estimate, 1,000 kilos. Street value approaching $20 million. Diana felt the number like a punch. $20 million in cocaine, stolen from under federal oversight, presumably back in cartel hands for distribution. And they'd been operating for at least a year, probably longer. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Check your apartment. Bedroom closet. Behind the false panel." Diana stared at the message, her pulse quickening. Someone knew about the false panel in her closet, a hiding space she'd installed years ago for emergency documents. Someone had access to her apartment. Someone was sending her a message. "Rodriguez," she called. "We need to go. Now." They took 2 vehicles with a full tactical team, not sure what they were walking into. Diana's apartment building looked peaceful in the afternoon sun, no indication of the chaos that had erupted there hours earlier. The shattered door had been temporarily secured with boards crime scene tape crisscrossing the entrance. Diana used her key to remove the boards, her hand steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. The apartment was exactly as they'd left it, furniture overturned from the raid, her belongings scattered, the general devastation of a police search conducted without care. She moved to the bedroom, to the closet, to the back wall that looked solid but concealed a small hidden compartment. Her fingers found the release mechanism, and the panel swung open. Inside was a manila envelope. Diana pulled it out with gloved hands, her heart hammering. The envelope was sealed, unmarked except for 3 words written in neat block letters: "You were right." She opened it carefully. Inside were photographs, surveillance images of the fake DEA agent Barrett had described, pulling up to various police stations, loading drugs into his truck. But these weren't Barrett's photos. These were professional-grade surveillance shots, the kind taken with high-end equipment from concealed positions. Someone else had been watching. Someone else had documented the thefts, and they'd just handed Diana the evidence she needed to blow this case wide open. Rodriguez looked over her shoulder at the photos, her expression grim. "We've got a source. Someone inside the operation who wants to help." "Or someone setting us up," Diana countered. But even as she said it, she knew it didn't quite fit. The photos were too good, too detailed. This was someone with resources and training. At the bottom of the envelope was a burner phone and a note: "Midnight. Pier 7. Come alone." Diana showed it to Rodriguez, who immediately shook her head. "Absolutely not. This screams ambush." "Or it's someone who can't risk being seen with federal agents in daylight," Diana argued. "Someone who knows they're being watched. All the more reason not to go alone. If I show up with a team, they'll disappear. You know that." Diana met her handler's eyes. 15 years, Rodriguez. 15 years I've been making judgment calls in the field, and I've gotten it right every time. Trust me on this." Rodriguez was silent for a long moment. Then she sighed. "Fine, but you're wearing a wire and we're setting up overwatch positions with sniper support. Anything goes wrong, we extract you immediately." Diana nodded. It was a compromise she could live with. The rest of the day passed in a blur of preparation. The press conference had sparked a firestorm of media coverage, the story spreading nationally within hours. Cable news was calling it the biggest police corruption scandal in a decade. Diana's face was everywhere, her cover identity and real identity side by side, the contrast stark and unsettling. As midnight approached, Diana changed into dark clothing and checked her weapon, a Sig Sauer P226 she'd kept hidden for 15 years, just in case. Rodriguez helped her with the wire, a tiny transmitter taped between her shoulder blades. "You don't have to do this," Rodriguez said quietly. "We can work the case without this meat." "No, we can't," Diana replied. "Whoever sent those photos is our only lead to the inside of this operation. If we lose them, we lose our chance to stop whatever's coming next." She drove alone to the waterfront, the city's lights reflecting off the dark water. Pier 7 was an abandoned shipping dock scheduled for redevelopment, but currently just a stretch of rotting wood and rusted machinery. Diana parked and walked out onto the pier, her hand never far from her weapon. At exactly midnight, a figure emerged from the shadows. Diana's breath caught. It was Officer Johnson. Diana's hand moved to her weapon by pure instinct, but she forced herself to stop to breathe to process what she was seeing. Johnson stood 20 feet away, his hands visible and empty, his weathered face illuminated by the distant glow of the city lights reflected off the water. "Easy," he said quietly. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here because you need to know what's really happening." "You left those photos in my apartment," Diana said. It wasn't a question. "I had to make sure they'd be found only by you. The department's been compromised for so long I didn't know who else to trust." Johnson took a cautious step forward. "Agent Marshall, I've been documenting the drug thefts for 18 months. Ever since I realized what Wilson was doing." Diana's mind raced. "You knew about the corruption. For 18 months you knew, and you didn't report it." "I tried." Johnson's voice cracked. "You think I didn't try? I went to Internal Affairs. They buried it. I went to the state police. They said they'd investigate and nothing happened. I even called the FBI tip line twice. Never got a call back." He laughed bitterly. "Turns out I was calling to report crimes to an organization that already had someone inside documenting everything. You were the investigation I was trying to trigger." The irony of it settled over Diana like a weight. All this time Johnson had been trying to do exactly what she was doing, but from inside the system with none of her resources or protection. "The photos," Diana pressed. "How did you get them?" "I started my own surveillance. Used my personal camera, my own car, my days off. I documented every time that fake DEA agent showed up. Baltimore wasn't the first time he'd been hitting our seizures for over a year before Barrett finally noticed something was wrong." Johnson pulled out a small notebook, handed it to Diana. "Dates times amounts. I've got it all logged." Diana flipped through the pages, her heart sinking with each entry. The fake agent had stolen from 17 different busts across 8 jurisdictions. Conservative estimate 1,500 kilos. Nearly $30 million in cocaine vanished back into criminal hands. "Why now?" Diana asked. "Why reach out tonight?" "Because Barrett talked. I heard what he told the inspection division. He's going to testify about Baltimore, but he doesn't know the full scope. He doesn't know that this has been happening up and down the coast for 2 years." Johnson's eyes were intense. "And he doesn't know the worst part." "Which is?" Johnson glanced around the empty pier as if even here, surrounded by water and darkness, someone might be listening. "The fake agent, the guy using names like Reeves and Torres, he's not working alone. He's got a partner inside actual federal law enforcement. Someone who gives him advance notice of major busts. Someone who provides him with authentic-looking credentials. Someone who covers his tracks in the databases." Diana felt ice run down her spine. "You know who it is." "I've got a short list. 3 DEA agents who were present at or had advance knowledge of every single theft. But I can't prove which one is dirty, and I can't take the evidence to DEA Internal Affairs. Because if I'm wrong about which one it is, the real mole will be warned and disappear. So, you're giving it to me. You're the only person I trust absolutely. You spent 15 years building a corruption case when you could have taken easier assignments. You're not in this for glory or career advancement. You're in it because you actually give a damn about justice." Johnson's voice softened. "That's rare, Agent Marshall. Agent. Rarer than you might think." Diana's earpiece crackled softly, Rodriguez checking in from her overwatch position. Diana tapped her collar twice, the signal that everything was okay, but she needed more time. "These 3 DEA agents," Diana said. "I need their names." Johnson recited them from memory. Special Agent Marcus Vega, assigned to the Baltimore Field Office. 20 years with DEA, impeccable record, multiple commendations. Special Agent Linda Chen, Newark Field Office. 15 years expert in financial crimes and money laundering, and Special Agent Thomas Brennan. Diana's head snapped up. Brennan, as in City Council President, Thomas Brennan's brother. Yeah. Johnson's expression was grim. Which is why I couldn't take this to anyone locally. If Thomas Brennan is protecting the department's corruption from the political side, and his brother is running interference from the federal side, they've got both angles covered. The pieces were falling into place with terrible clarity. A city councilman taking bribes to block police reform. His brother a federal agent enabling drug theft from seizures. A network of corruption spanning local and federal law enforcement protected at multiple levels, operating for years without detection. We need more than suspicion, Diana said. We need proof. Something that definitively links one of these agents to the thefts. I've got something. Maybe. Johnson pulled out a flash drive. Security footage from a truck stop outside Richmond. One of the thefts happened at a state police barracks. The fake agent took 100 kilos from their evidence room. I pulled the surveillance from every camera within 5 miles of that barracks for the 12 hours before and after the theft. And I found footage of our fake agent's truck at this truck stop 3 hours after the theft. He's transferring the drugs to another vehicle, a black SUV with government plates. I got a partial on this plate number and ran it. Comes back registered to DEA Motor Pool in Baltimore. Diana's pulse quickened. That could be driven by any DEA agent. True, but I also got a clear shot of the person driving the SUV when they pulled out of the parking lot. Johnson's smile was thin and cold. Facial recognition is amazing these days. Even with gas station camera quality, I got an 87% match. To which agent? Marcus Vega. Diana processed this, running through implications. Vega was the Baltimore field office agent. He'd have perfect access to information about local seizures, perfect opportunity to create fake credentials, perfect cover to move drugs without raising suspicion. This footage, Diana said carefully. Where is it? On that drive, along with 18 months of documentation, surveillance photos, license plate records, and a timeline cross-referencing every drug theft with Vega's known movements. Johnson met her eyes. It's enough to start building a case, but Agent Marshall, you need to move fast, because I think they know someone's watching them. What makes you say that? Johnson's face darkened. 2 weeks ago, another officer started asking questions about the drug thefts. Detective Sarah Morrison, Narcotics Division. Good cop, smart, thorough. She noticed the same discrepancies I did. Started pulling files, making inquiries. He paused. 3 days ago, she was killed in what they're calling a traffic accident. Single car collision, lost control on a curve she drove every day for 5 years. Convenient timing. Diana's blood ran cold. You think it was murder? I think Detective Morrison got too close to something that powerful people wanted to keep hidden. And I think the same thing will happen to me if they figure out I've been documenting their operation. Johnson's hand trembled slightly as he pocketed the notebook. That's why I needed to get this evidence to you tonight. If something happens to me, at least someone will know the truth. Nothing's going to happen to you, Diana said firmly. As of this moment, you're under federal protection. Rodriguez, she spoke toward her collar mic. We need an immediate extraction and protective detail for Officer Johnson. Copy that. Rodriguez's voice came through the earpiece. Teams moving in now. Within seconds, the pier was flooded with federal agents emerging from positions Diana hadn't even noticed. Johnson startled, his hand moving instinctively toward where his service weapon would have been if he were on duty. It's okay, Diana assured him. They're here to protect you. Rodriguez appeared flanked by 2 tactical agents. She assessed Johnson with the practiced eye of someone who'd evaluated countless potential witnesses and assets. Officer Johnson, she said, we're going to need you to come with us. Complete debriefing, formal statement, and then we're putting you somewhere safe until we can verify the information you've provided and determine the threat level. Johnson nodded, but before the agents could lead him away, he turned back to Diana. Agent Marshall, there's one more thing. Something I couldn't put in the documentation because I don't have proof, just a feeling. Tell me. I think the corruption goes higher than Thomas Brennan. I think there's someone in the Justice Department, someone senior, who's been protecting this whole operation. Because every time someone got close, every time an investigation started to gain traction, it got shut down from above. Not from the local level, from Washington. Diana felt the ground shift beneath her feet. If Johnson was right, if there was someone in Maine Justice actively protecting a drug trafficking operation, then they were dealing with something beyond ordinary corruption. They were dealing with organized crime that had infiltrated the highest levels of law enforcement. Did Morrison mention any names? Diana asked. Anyone she suspected? She was scared to say too much, but the last time I talked to her 2 days before she died, she said she'd found something in the budget files, money being moved around appropriations that didn't match the official records. She was going to send me what she'd found. Johnson's jaw tightened. I never got it. Her apartment was burglarized the night of her death. Computer stolen files gone. Very thorough. Rodriguez exchanged a glance with Diana. We need to pull Morrison's case file. If they ruled it an accident without a proper investigation. They didn't investigate at all, Johnson interrupted. Single car accident driver at fault, case closed within 24 hours. No toxicology, no mechanical inspection, nothing. Just a quick ruling and a cremation authorization that her family didn't request but somehow got processed anyway. The implications were staggering. A detective murdered for getting too close. Evidence destroyed. An investigation shut down before it could start. All the hallmarks of a professional cleanup, the kind that required resources and reach far beyond what a local corrupt department could muster. Diana's phone buzzed. A text from Agent Zhao. Need you back at station. Urgent. They caravanned back to the station, Johnson secured in an armored SUV between two tactical vehicles. Diana rode with Rodriguez, both women silent as they processed what they'd learned. This is bigger than we thought, Rodriguez finally said. Bigger than Barrett suspected. If we've got compromised agents at DEA and someone at Maine Justice providing cover, we're looking at a conspiracy that could reach the highest levels of federal law enforcement, Diana finished. And that means we can't trust normal channels. We can't route this through regular FBI procedures because we don't know who's compromised. What are you suggesting? Diana's expression hardened. I'm suggesting we build the case ourselves. Use only people we absolutely trust. Document everything with redundant backups. And when we move fast and hard, taking down the entire network at once before anyone can run or destroy evidence. That's going to take time we might not have. Then we work faster. The station was ablaze with activity when they arrived. Something had changed in the hours Diana had been gone. She could feel it in the tension crackling through the air, see it in the urgent movements of agents and officials. Agent Zhao met them at the door, her face grim. We've got a problem. Barrett's attorney is threatening to withdraw his cooperation unless we can guarantee his safety. Someone sent a photo to her office. Barrett's wife and daughter, clear surveillance shots taken this afternoon. The message was clear talk, and your family dies. Diana's hands clenched into fists. Where's his family now? We pulled them into protective custody an hour ago. They're safe. But Barrett's terrified, and his lawyer's making noise about moving him out of our jurisdiction entirely. Maybe witness protection in another state. We can't let that happen, Diana said. His testimony is crucial for both the local corruption case and the DEA investigation. Without him, I know. Zhao's expression was troubled. But we also can't force him to testify if he believes his family's in danger. The threat is real. Whoever sent those photos had professional surveillance on his house. This isn't amateur hour. Rodriguez pulled out her phone. I'll coordinate with Marshall's service, get the family moved to a secure facility out of state. But Zhao's right, we're dealing with professionals, cartel-level resources. As they walked through the station, toward the secure wing, Diana noticed the arrested officers watching her with expressions ranging from fear to hatred. Word had spread about Johnson's defection, about Barrett's cooperation, about the case expanding beyond local corruption into federal crimes. The thin veneer of brotherhood that had held the corrupt department together was cracking, and everyone could feel it. Captain Wilson sat in his cell, his gray hair disheveled, his uniform stripped away. He looked up as Diana passed, and something flickered in his eyes, not quite remorse, but maybe the beginning of understanding. "Agent Marshall," he called out, "I need to talk to you." Diana stopped. Rodriguez put a hand on her arm in warning, but Diana shook it off. "What is it, Captain?" Wilson stood, moving to the bars. "You were right. About everything. The corruption, the systematic violations, all of it. I spent 30 years building something I thought was necessary. A department that got results that kept the streets safe, even if we had to bend the rules to do it." His voice broke. "I told myself we were the good guys, that the ends justified the means, that the people we hurt probably deserved it anyway." "Is this a confession?" Diana asked coldly. "It's an apology, for what it's worth." Wilson's hands gripped the bars. "But it's also a warning. You think you've uncovered the whole operation, but you haven't. There are people above me, people I reported to, people who made it clear that certain types of arrests were expected and certain types of evidence were acceptable. I didn't create this system, Agent Marshall. I just maintained it." "Who?" Diana demanded. "Who gave you those orders?" Wilson shook his head. "I never met them face to face. Everything was through intermediaries, encrypted messages, burner phones. But I know they're connected to the drug trafficking. I know they're federal, and I know they've been operating for at least a decade, probably longer. If you cooperate fully, if you give us everything you know—" "I'm a dead man either way," Wilson interrupted. "Either I die in prison as a corrupt cop, or I die in witness protection with a new identity waiting for the day they find me. But maybe—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Maybe if I help you destroy the whole network, it'll count for something. Maybe it'll balance the scales just a little bit." Diana studied him, trying to determine if this was genuine remorse or calculated self-preservation. Probably both. Men like Wilson rarely experienced pure emotions. Everything was transactional, even redemption. "We'll talk," Diana said finally. "But Captain, understand, this cooperation doesn't equal forgiveness. You're going to prison for what you did. The only question is whether you go as part of the problem or part of the solution." She walked away before he could respond, Rodriguez hurrying to keep up. "You believe him?" Rodriguez asked. "I believe he's scared. Scared people tell the truth when they think it might save them." Diana's jaw set. "But I also believe he's right about one thing. This goes higher than we've seen. Morrison found something in the budget files. Wilson's talking about federal handlers. Johnson has evidence pointing to DEA. It's all connected, and it's all pointing to someone with serious power." They reached the conference room where Agent Zhao had set up a command center. Screens covered one wall displaying interconnected webs of names, dates, financial transactions. In the center of it all was a single question mark, the unknown figure at the top of the conspiracy. Zhao pointed to a screen showing bank records. "We've been following the money from the drug thefts. The proceeds don't just disappear, they get laundered through a series of shell companies, then distributed to various recipients. Most of it goes to what we assume are cartel operations in Mexico. But some of it," she highlighted several transactions, "comes back to accounts in the United States. Specifically, to accounts connected to individuals in law enforcement and government." "How much are we talking?" Diana asked. $12 million over 2 years, spread across 15 accounts registered to 12 different people. Zhao pulled up a list. "Most of them are shell identities, but we've traced 3 back to real individuals. One is Thomas Brennan, city councilman. The second is a deputy director at the Office of National Drug Control Policy. The third, she paused, her expression darkening, is a senior trial attorney at Maine Justice. The room went silent. A Justice Department attorney on the take was bad enough, but one involved in drug trafficking, one protecting a cartel operation from federal prosecution, that was a crisis that could shake the entire department. "Do we have a name?" Diana asked quietly. Michael Hendricks, 23 years at Justice, specializes in RICO cases and organized crime prosecution. He's won convictions against some of the biggest trafficking organizations in the country. Zhao's voice dripped with irony. Or so everyone thought. Turns out he was winning those cases by feeding the competition to the cartels he was actually protecting. Diana felt sick. How many investigations had Hendricks sabotaged? How many traffickers had walked free because he'd tipped them off? How many agents had died because he'd leaked their identities? "We need to move on him now," Rodriguez said, "before he finds out we're onto him." "We can't," Zhao countered. "Not yet. We don't have enough for an arrest, just financial transactions that his lawyers will claim are legitimate consulting fees or investments. We need proof of active corruption, of him interfering with specific cases or leaking classified information." "Then we give him the opportunity," Diana said slowly, an idea forming. "We feed him information about our investigation, make him think we're about to arrest someone in his network. Then we watch what he does." Rodriguez's eyes widened. "You want to run a sting operation against a Justice Department attorney? That's the only way to catch him," Diana finished. "We set the trap, bait it with information he can't ignore, and wait for him to make a mistake." Zhao considered this, her expression thoughtful. "It's risky. If he suspects it's a setup, he'll disappear. And if we're wrong about him, if he's somehow innocent, we'll have destroyed the career of a senior federal prosecutor." "I don't think we're wrong," Diana said. "Morrison found something in the budget files that got her killed. Wilson's talking about federal handlers. The money trail leads directly to someone at Maine Justice. And Johnson's surveillance shows a pattern of federal interference every time someone gets close to the truth." She met Zhao's eyes. "This is the guy. I know it." Before Zhao could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red. An agent burst into the conference room, his face pale. "We've got a breach," he shouted. "Someone just tried to access the evidence room where we're holding the drugs from Marshall's apartment. Armed suspect still in the building." Diana's hand went to her weapon. "Where?" "Lower level near the storage vaults. Tactical team is responding, but..." The agent's radio crackled with gunfire. "Shots fired. Officer down." The building erupted into chaos. Federal agents and the few remaining local officers who hadn't been arrested scrambled for positions. Weapons drawn, voices shouting coordinates and status updates. Diana ran toward the stairs with Rodriguez and Zhao behind her, her training taking over. The lower level was a maze of corridors and storage rooms, dimly lit and filled with shadows. Diana moved carefully, her weapon up, every sense alert. Somewhere ahead she could hear running footsteps, the clatter of equipment, the harsh breathing of someone moving fast. She rounded a corner and came face to face with a figure in tactical gear, face obscured by a balaclava. For a frozen moment they stared at each other. Then the figure raised their weapon. Diana fired first. 3 shots, center mass, the gunman going down hard. She approached carefully, weapon trained on the fallen figure, and pulled off the mask. Her breath caught. It was Special Agent Marcus Vega. The DEA agent Johnson had identified. The one with access to seizure information, the one with motive and opportunity. And now caught red-handed trying to steal evidence from an FBI facility. Vega was still alive, gasping for breath, the ballistic vest under his tactical gear having stopped Diana's bullets. She kicked his weapon away and pinned him down. Rodriguez arriving seconds later to help restrain him. "Marcus Vega," Diana said formally. "You're under arrest for attempted theft of federal evidence, assault on federal officers, and conspiracy to traffic controlled substances. You have the right to remain silent." "You don't understand," Vega gasped. His eyes were wild with fear. "I had to get those drugs. If they run analysis, if they find the markers." "What markers?" Diana demanded. Vega's laugh was desperate, unhinged. "The drugs planted in your apartment weren't from the Baltimore seizure. They were from a DEA-controlled bypart of a sting operation I was running. If anyone tests them, if anyone finds the chemical markers we added to track them, it'll expose the whole operation. It'll expose everyone involved." Diana's mind raced. "You planted DEA sting operation drugs in my apartment. Why?" "Because they were convenient. Because I had access. Because I thought it was just another bullshit local arrest that would never see a federal lab." Vega's face crumpled. "I didn't know you were FBI. I didn't know it would blow up like this. I just did what I was told." "Who told you?" Diana's voice was steel. "Who gave you the order to plant those drugs?" Vega's eyes found hers, and in them, Diana saw a broken man who'd crossed too many lines and could never find his way back. "Michael Hendricks," he whispered. "He's been running us for 3 years. DEA, local PD, everyone. He picks the targets, provides the product, tells us when to move. He said you were asking too many questions about the Hernandez case, that you needed to be neutralized before you found something bigger." The confession spilled out of him like poison from a wound. Names, dates, operations. Hendricks had built an empire of corruption spanning multiple agencies, using his position at Justice to protect traffickers who paid him, eliminating competitors who didn't, and maintaining control through a network of compromised agents and officers. As Vega talked, as agents recorded every word, Diana felt the final pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. This was what Morrison had found. This was what had gotten her killed. A Justice Department attorney using federal law enforcement as his private criminal organization. And now finally, they had the evidence to bring him down. Rodriguez was already on the phone with FBI headquarters, coordinating with the director personally. This was too big for normal channels, too sensitive for standard procedures. They'd need to move fast, hit Hendricks before he knew Vega had been caught, before he could destroy evidence or disappear. Zhao knelt beside Vega, her expression a mix of disgust and pity. "How many others? How many agents did Hendricks corrupt?" "Dozens," Vega said. "Maybe hundreds. Some knew exactly what they were doing. Others just followed orders, never asking questions, never looking too closely at where those orders came from." His eyes found Diana again. "I wanted to be a good agent. When I joined DEA, I believed in the mission. But Hendricks, he's got this way of making wrong seem right. Of making you think that bending the rules a little bit is justified if it gets results. And by the time you realize you've crossed the line, you're in too deep to get out." "You could have come forward," Diana said. "At any point you could have exposed him." "I could have died," Vega corrected. "Morrison tried to expose him. Where is she now?" The question hung in the air, unanswerable and damning. Diana stood looking down at the man who'd tried to kill her career, who'd been part of a system that destroyed lives and corrupted justice. She should feel triumph, victory. Instead, she felt tired and sad and grimly determined. "Take him," she told the agents. "Full medical check, then isolation. Nobody talks to him except Zhao's team. And get me everything he knows about Hendricks's operation. Every name, every case, every dirty deal." As they hauled Vega away, Diana's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Agent Marshall?" The voice on the other end was smooth, cultured, utterly calm. "This is Michael Hendricks. I believe we should talk." Diana's hand tightened on the phone, her eyes meeting Rodriguez's across the room. She made a quick gesture, "Record this," and Rodriguez immediately started coordinating with the tech team. "Mr. Hendricks," Diana said, keeping her voice neutral. "How did you get this number?" "Please, Agent Marshall. I'm a senior trial attorney at the United States Department of Justice. Getting an FBI agent's phone number is hardly a challenge." His tone was almost amused, like they were colleagues discussing a case over coffee, rather than hunter and prey circling each other. I assume by now you've spoken with Marcus Vega. Poor Marcus. Always was too emotional for this work. I imagine he's telling you all sorts of interesting stories. He's telling us the truth, Diana said flatly. About you. About the corruption you've been orchestrating for years. About Detective Morrison's murder. There was a pause. When Hendricks spoke again, his voice had lost its casual warmth. Sarah Morrison's death was a tragedy, a single car accident. These things happen. She was murdered because she found evidence of your financial crimes. Evidence of money flowing from drug cartels into your accounts, into Thomas Brennan's accounts, into a network of corrupted officials you built to protect your operation. That's quite an accusation, Agent Marshall. I hope you have evidence to support it. Because without evidence, it's just slander. And slander against a federal prosecutor, well, that can be career-ending. Diana's jaw clenched. The arrogance in his voice, the absolute certainty that he was untouchable, made her blood boil. We have Vega's confession. We have Johnson's surveillance. We have Barrett's testimony. We have financial records communications, a paper trail that leads directly to you. Your career is already over, Hendricks. The only question is whether you're going to make this harder than it needs to be. Hendricks laughed, a genuine sound of amusement that made Diana's skin crawl. Do you know how many corruption cases I've prosecuted in my career, Agent Marshall? 47. 47 convictions against drug traffickers, money launderers, corrupt officials. I wrote the playbook on how to build these cases, and you think you can use that playbook against me? I think you made a mistake, Diana said. You got complacent. You thought you were too smart to get caught, too connected to be touched. But that's what they all think. And they're always wrong. We'll see. Hendricks's voice shifted, became almost conversational. I called to make you an offer. A professional courtesy, if you will. You've built an impressive case against the local department. Captain Wilson, Sergeant Barrett. The others, they're corrupt. And they deserve to go to prison. Take that win, Agent Marshall. Make your headlines, get your commendations. But leave the federal investigation alone. Or what? Or I destroy you. No threat in his voice, just calm certainty. I've been doing this for 23 years. I know where the bodies are buried, literally and figuratively. I know which judges are compromised, which politicians are on the take, which federal agents have secrets they'd kill to protect. You want to go to war with me, fine. But understand that war is messy. People get hurt. Careers get destroyed. Families suffer. He paused. I know you have a niece at Georgetown. Bright girl. Pre-law excellent grades. It would be a shame if something derailed her future. Diana's vision went red. If you touch my family. I'm not threatening them, Agent Marshall. I'm explaining consequences. You push this investigation, and everyone around you becomes collateral damage. Is that really what you want? Is your crusade for justice worth destroying the lives of everyone you love? Rodriguez was making urgent hand signals. Keep him talking, they were tracing the call. Diana forced herself to breathe, to think strategically rather than emotionally. You know what I think, Hendricks? I think you're scared. I think Vega's confession rattled you, and now you're trying to intimidate me into backing down because you know your network is collapsing. But it won't work, because I didn't spend 15 years building this case to walk away when it gets difficult. 15 years investigating local police corruption, Hendricks corrected. Not investigating me. You stumbled into this, Agent Marshall. You got lucky. But luck runs out. So does time, Diana said. And yours is up. She ended the call. Rodriguez immediately moved to her side, the tech team already pulling up trace results. We got him, Rodriguez said, showing Diana the screen. He called from his Justice Department office. Arrogant bastard, didn't even try to hide. Zhao appeared, her face grim. We've got authorization from the director. FBI headquarters is coordinating with the Inspector General's office. We move on Hendricks in 1 hour. The next 60 minutes passed in a blur of organized chaos. Strike teams assembled, warrants were finalized, contingencies planned for every possible scenario. Diana changed into tactical gear, checked her weapon, and tried to quiet the voice in her head that kept replaying Hendricks' threat against her family. Rodriguez found her in the locker room. "I've already called Georgetown campus security. Your niece is being moved to a safe location. Your sister's family is under protective watch. Hendricks can't touch them." "Thank you," Diana said quietly. The gratitude was genuine, but it didn't erase the cold fury burning in her chest. Hendricks had crossed a line not just legally, but personally, and she was going to make sure he paid for it. The convoy rolled out at 11:47 p.m., a fleet of black SUVs moving through the city toward the Justice Department building in downtown D.C. Diana rode in the lead vehicle with Zhao and Rodriguez, her mind running through the operation step by step. They'd coordinated with building security, confirmed Hendricks was still in his office, positioned teams at every exit. But as they approached the building, Diana's instincts screamed warning. Something felt off. The operation was too smooth, too easy. Hendricks was too smart to be sitting in his office waiting to be arrested. "Stop the vehicle," she said suddenly. The driver braked. "Agent Marshall." "It's a trap. He knew we'd come for him. He's been planning for this." Diana pulled out her phone, dialing the FBI's cyber division. "I need you to check Hendricks' digital footprint. Credit cards, phone records, security badge access. Tell me where he actually is right now." The analyst typed rapidly. "His office security badge shows him entering the building at 6 p.m., no exit logged. Credit card charges show... Wait, there's a charge from Reagan National Airport. First-class ticket to Mexico City, departing in 37 minutes. "He's running," Rodriguez said. "God damn it, he knew we were coming and he's running." The convoy diverted, sirens blaring as they raced toward the airport. Diana was already coordinating with airport security TSA FBI field agents stationed at the terminals. They had 37 minutes to lock down the airport and find one man among thousands of travelers. Traffic was light this late at night, and they made it to Reagan National in 18 minutes. Diana hit the ground running, her badge out, shouting orders to airport security. "Lock down international departures. Nobody boards that Mexico City flight. I need every security camera feeding to my tablet. Now." The airport erupted into controlled chaos. TSA agents stopped the boarding process at Gate B27, where the Mexico City flight was preparing to depart. Passengers complained loudly as armed FBI agents swept through the terminal. Diana studied the security feeds, scanning faces looking for Hendricks. The man was in his early 50s, distinguished-looking gray hair, and an expensive suit. He should stand out. But the terminal was full of business travelers in expensive suits, and there. Diana's eyes locked on a figure moving against the crowd, heading away from the gates toward the rental car area. Gray hair, but dyed darker. Suit replaced with casual clothes. Glasses added to change his profile. But the walk was the same, the posture, the way he carried himself. "Ground floor rental car area," Diana transmitted. "Subject attempting to leave airport by vehicle." She sprinted for the stairs, taking them 3 at a time, Rodriguez and tactical agents behind her. The rental car area was a concrete cavern filled with shuttles and travelers hauling luggage. Diana spotted Hendricks climbing into a silver sedan, key fob in hand. "Michael Hendricks," she shouted. "FBI, exit the vehicle now." Hendricks looked up, saw her, and made a decision. The engine roared to life, and the sedan shot forward, tires squealing on concrete. Diana dove aside as the vehicle rocketed past her, heading for the exit. But they'd anticipated this. A black SUV blocked the exit ramp, tactical agents positioned behind it with weapons drawn. Hendricks' sedan screeched to a halt. For a moment, Diana thought he might surrender. Then he threw the car in reverse and floored it. The sedan shot backward directly at Diana. She rolled behind a concrete pillar as the vehicle smashed into a shuttle bus, metal crunching, glass shattering. The impact deployed the airbags, and Hendricks was stunned, slumped over the steering wheel. Diana and Rodriguez reached the vehicle simultaneously, weapons drawn. Diana yanked open the driver's door and hauled Hendricks out, slamming him against the hood of the wrecked sedan. "Michael Hendricks," she said, her voice shaking with controlled rage. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to traffic controlled substances, murder for hire, obstruction of justice, corruption of federal officials, and about 40 other charges I'm going to enjoy listing in court." She cuffed him with more force than necessary. "You have the right to remain silent, and I suggest you use it." Hendricks said nothing, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead, his expensive disguise disheveled and pathetic. As they loaded him into a federal transport vehicle, Diana felt the weight of 15 years lift from her shoulders. It was over. The architect of the corruption was in custody. The network was exposed. Justice finally was coming. The next 3 months were a whirlwind of grand jury proceedings, evidence processing, and witness preparation. Barrett cooperated fully, his testimony detailing years of systemic corruption. Johnson provided the surveillance evidence that connected Vega to the drug thefts. Wilson, facing life in prison, gave up every dirty secret he knew in exchange for a reduced sentence. And Diana testified. Day after day, case after case, walking judges and juries through 15 years of documented crimes. Every planted evidence bag, every falsified report, every violated right. The weight of 372 ruined lives presented in clinical detail. The trial of the century, the media called it. Federal prosecutors versus 23 corrupt police officers, 1 DEA agent, and a Justice Department attorney. The courtroom was packed daily with victims' reporters, legal scholars watching history unfold. Diana sat in the witness box on day 7 of testimony, facing down Hendricks's defense attorney, a sharp woman who was doing her best with an impossible case. "Agent Marshall," the attorney said, "isn't it true that you engaged in deception for 15 years, that you lied to everyone you met about your identity?" "I maintained a cover identity as part of an authorized federal investigation," Diana corrected. "That's not the same as lying for personal gain or to violate someone's rights." "But you deceived people. You manipulated them." "How is that different from what my client allegedly did?" "Because," Diana said, meeting the attorney's eyes, "I was working within the law to expose criminals. Your client was working outside the law to protect them. Intent matters. Morality matters. And the fact that I had to spend 15 years hiding the truth to document their crimes doesn't make those crimes any less real." The attorney tried several more angles, but the evidence was overwhelming. Financial records showing money flowing to Hendricks from cartel sources. Communications between Hendricks and Vega discussing drug shipments. Testimony from Morrison's family about how she'd been threatened days before her death. The chemist's report on the drugs planted in Diana's apartment, showing the DEA tracking markers that proved they came from Vega's sting operation. On day 23, the jury returned with verdicts. Guilty. 23 counts for Wilson. Guilty. 18 counts for Barrett. Guilty, 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 the word echoing through the courtroom as each corrupt officer heard their fate. And for Hendricks, guilty on all 47 counts. Conspiracy, racketeering, drug trafficking, murder for hire in connection with Morrison's death, obstruction of justice. The list went on and on, each guilty verdict hammering another nail into the coffin of his career, his freedom, his life. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. Diana sat in the gallery watching as the judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, who'd made her reputation prosecuting organized crime, addressed the defendants. "In my 30 years on the bench," Judge Patricia Hammond began, "I have never seen corruption this systematic, this destructive, this morally bankrupt. You, Captain Wilson, and you, Sergeant Barrett, and all of you who wore the badge, you betrayed everything that badge represents. You destroyed lives. You shattered families. You made a mockery of justice." Wilson stood to face his sentence. His shoulders bent, his face gray. The defendant, Theodore Wilson, is hereby sentenced to 27 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years supervised release. Barrett got 18 years. Rodriguez got 15. The other officers received sentences ranging from 8 to 22 years. Each one adjusted based on their level of involvement and cooperation. But Hendricks was different. "Michael Hendricks," Judge Hammond said, and her voice could have cut steel. "You were given a position of public trust. You were tasked with upholding the law, with prosecuting criminals, with protecting the innocent. Instead, you became the very thing you were supposed to fight. You enabled drug trafficking that killed American citizens. You protected cartels that devastate communities. You ordered the murder of a dedicated public servant who was trying to expose your crimes." She paused, letting the weight of those words settle over the courtroom. "You will spend the rest of your life in federal prison, life without possibility of parole. And I hope that every day of that life you think about the people you destroyed, the trust you betrayed, and the evil you enabled." Hendricks showed no emotion as the marshals led him away. But Diana saw his hands shaking, saw the way his perfect composure finally cracked. Outside the courthouse, a crowd had gathered. Not protesters' supporters. Maria Hernandez stood at the front, her son Marcus beside her. He was 21 now, the 3 years he'd lost to juvenile detention, visible in the hardness around his eyes, but not defining him anymore. Diana walked over to them, her heart heavy with the knowledge that justice delayed was still injustice. "Ms. Hernandez," she said. "Marcus, I'm so sorry it took this long." Maria pulled Diana into a fierce hug. "You did it. You got them. My son is free, his record is being expunged, and the man who destroyed our lives is going to die in prison." Tears streamed down her face. "Thank you. Thank you for not giving up." Marcus extended his hand, and Diana shook it. "Agent Marshall, I'm starting college next semester. Georgetown, pre-law. I'm going to be a civil rights attorney. Because of what you did, because you showed me that the system can work if people are willing to fight for it." Diana's vision blurred with tears she'd been holding back for months. "You're going to be amazing, Marcus. And I'm going to be there cheering you on." The press conference afterward was carried live on every major network. District Attorney Cortez announced sweeping reforms to the police department, civilian oversight boards, mandatory body cameras with tamper-proof storage, independent investigation of all use-of-force incidents, community input on hiring and promotion decisions. "This city is getting a fresh start," Cortez declared. "We're hiring a new police chief from outside our jurisdiction, someone with a track record of reform and accountability. We're retraining every officer. We're reviewing every arrest made in the past 5 years to identify potential wrongful convictions. This is not just punishment for the guilty, this is transformation of the system itself." The FBI director himself flew in for a ceremony honoring the agents who'd worked Operation Cleanhouse. Diana stood on the stage with Rodriguez Zhao and the dozens of analysts and investigators who'd helped build the case. 15 years, the director said, addressing the packed auditorium. Special Agent Diana Marshall spent 15 years of her life living a lie to document the truth. That level of dedication, that commitment to justice, represents the very best of what the FBI can be. Because of her patience, because of her courage, because of her unwavering belief that evidence and law would prevail, we've dismantled one of the most extensive corruption networks in American law enforcement history. He pinned a medal on Diana's chest, the FBI Medal for Meritorious Achievement. She stood at attention, overwhelmed by the applause, by the recognition, by the knowledge that it was finally, truly over. But the moment that meant the most came later that evening in a quiet restaurant where Diana met Officer Johnson for dinner. He was in civilian clothes now, having officially resigned from the police department. His face looked lighter somehow, the weight of compromise and complicity finally lifted. "I got a job offer," he told Diana over coffee. "FBI Citizens Academy coordinator, working with communities to build trust, teaching people about their rights, creating dialogue between law enforcement and the public." He smiled. "Turns out there's a place for broken cops who want to fix things." "You're not broken," Diana said firmly. "You made the right choice when it mattered most. That takes strength, not weakness. Johnson's eyes were bright. My wife asked me last night if I regretted it. Walking away from my pension, my career, everything I'd worked for. You know what I told her? What? I told her I slept through the night for the first time in 18 months. No nightmares, no guilt keeping me awake. I can look at myself in the mirror again. He raised his coffee cup. To doing the right thing, even when it costs everything. Diana clinked her cup against his. To doing the right thing. 3 months after the trial, Diana received a call from Rodriguez. I've got your next assignment if you want it. Tell me. Immigration detention facilities. We're getting reports of systematic abuse, detainees being denied medical care, families separated beyond legal limits, guards using excessive force. It's a mess, and we need someone who can spend time inside, document everything, build a case that'll hold up in court. Diana thought about it. Another deep cover assignment. More years of living a double life, watching injustice and having to wait for the right moment to act. More victims she'd have to watch suffer while she collected evidence. But also, more people she could help. More corruption she could expose. More lives she could save. How long? She asked. 2 years, maybe 3. It's not as extensive as the police corruption case, but it's just as important. These are vulnerable people, immigrants, asylum seekers, children. They need someone willing to fight for them. Diana looked out her apartment window, a new apartment in a different city, a fresh start after 15 years in the same neighborhood. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and red. Send me the briefing, she said. I'll start next month. Because that's what she did. That's who she was. Not Diana Marshall, insurance adjuster. Not Diana Marshall, neighborhood fixture. But Special Agent Diana Marshall, FBI Internal Affairs Division. The person who walked into darkness to document it, who endured injustice to expose it, who spent years building cases that would bring corrupt officials to their knees. It was hard work, lonely work, work that took pieces of her soul and gave back only the satisfaction of knowing she'd made a difference. But as Diana packed up her apartment preparing for her next assignment, she thought about Maria Hernandez and her son, about Officer Johnson finding redemption, about 372 victims who now had their vindication, their proof that what happened to them was real and wrong and punishable. She thought about the young officers like Chen, who'd been corrupted by bad systems and might now have a chance to be better, about communities that could start to trust their police again, about reforms that would protect future victims. And she thought about justice, slow, patient, inevitable justice that arrived 15 years after she'd started fighting for it. Her phone rang one last time before she left the apartment. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Agent Marshall. A young woman's voice, nervous but determined. My name is Jennifer Torres. I'm a public defender in Phoenix. I've been noticing irregularities in how my clients are being treated, missing evidence, coerced confessions patterns that remind me of the case you just prosecuted. I don't know who else to call, but I thought maybe you could help me figure out if something bigger is happening here. Diana smiled, because that's how it always started. One person noticing something wrong. One person brave enough to speak up. One person refusing to accept that injustice was just how things worked. Tell me everything, Diana said. Start from the beginning, and don't leave anything out. And as Jennifer began her story, as Diana started taking notes and asking questions and already formulating the shape of an investigation, she felt the familiar pull of purpose. The knowledge that somewhere in the country, corruption was hiding in plain sight, protected by people who thought they were too powerful to touch. But they were wrong. They were always wrong. Because justice might be slow. It might take years, even decades. It might require patience and sacrifice, and the willingness to endure darkness in service of eventual light. But it came. It always came. And Diana Marshall would be there documenting every crime, gathering every piece of evidence, building the case that would bring the corrupt to their knees. one patient investigation at a time. The sun set on the city, and Diana closed the door on 15 years of her life. But somewhere across the country in Phoenix, a new case was waiting. New victims who needed justice. New criminals who thought they were untouchable. And Special Agent Diana Marshall, patient dedicated Relentless, was ready to prove them wrong. The work was never finished. The fight was never over. But as long as people like Diana were willing to walk into the darkness, as long as they were willing to document the crimes and build the cases and wait for justice no matter how long it took, there was hope. There was always hope. And that, in the end, was enough.